Chapter 797. In the demonic god state, Gu Yu's body was filled with intense evil thoughts. They turned into ripples and spread outwards, impacting the demon god's nerves. At this moment, the demon god, who had a ferocious expression, was shocked. He had never seen such pure evil thoughts. Even the celestial king, who was at the top of the Curson camp, did not have such a terrifying sense of oppression. At this moment, he seemed to see mountains of corpses and seas of blood behind Gu Yu, as well as endless scenes of slaughter. He could not imagine how much blood this man's hands were stained with. This almost materialized killing intent was beyond his understanding. He even had an illusion that even if he killed all the creatures in this world, he would not be able to condense such evil killing intent. "How about I kill your demonic soldiers?" Gu Yu asked with a hideous smile. As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Yu clenched his fist. Suddenly, the power of qi and blood boiled below him. All the demonic soldiers that were locked on were instantly turned into blood-red burning men. "So what if I kill them again?" The heavenly demonic cloak fluttered in the cold wind. Gu Yu raised his head and stared at the demon god as he asked again. "I'm here to make a deal. Do I have to follow your orders?" Seeing this, the demon god did not dare to speak anymore. He did not even dare to raise his head and look into Gu Yu's burning red eyes. This was because he realized that whenever he looked into Gu Yu's eyes, he would feel an uncontrollable fear and despair. This power that could erode his emotions was truly frightening. "You're not the god of this world, are you? I think there's a misunderstanding between us. How about letting me go? Otherwise, you'll never be able to leave this world." The demon god gritted his teeth as he resisted the urge to escape. "Never be able to leave? You're threatening me." The flames in Gu Yu's eyes suddenly shrank. The materialized black evil thoughts instantly entangled the demon god's body and invaded his body. The demon god immediately began to tremble. Intense fear completely broke out, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. "Don't kill me, an outsider. Otherwise, the gods of the Curson camp will not let you go. No matter how strong you are, how can you fight against the alliance of gods?" Under the fear of death, the demon god spoke in horror. If there was a glimmer of hope for survival if he knelt and begged for mercy, these words undoubtedly made Gu Yu want to kill him. As members of the heavenly demon army and players, they had never been afraid of a powerful enemy. "Anyone who tries to stop me from completing the transaction will die." As Gu Yu's voice faded, his pupils turned black. Endless evil thoughts appeared out of thin air on the surface of this demon god's body and penetrated into his body. Pitch-black flames rose from the inside out. The demon god could not resist Gu Yu's burning of evil thoughts at all. He screamed and turned into ashes, falling into the city along with the snowstorm. His soul was immediately converted into experience points and soul coins and stored in Gu Yu's personal space. Looking at Gu Yu floating in the air, all the believers in the city below were stunned. This person actually killed a demon god. Furthermore, it was done in such an understated manner. They were initially puzzled by Gu Yu's appearance. This man dared to provoke the demon god. In their eyes, he was truly audacious. Moreover, they had never seen Gu Yu before. Although this world was extremely vast, the gods of the Restraining Heart camp and the Munsa camp had some understanding of it. This was because they had built statues and reference charts for the gods of this world to use in prayer and worship. Therefore, they were puzzled by the inexplicable Gu Yu. At this moment, after witnessing the power displayed by Gu Yu, the doubts in their hearts turned into fear. Perhaps Gu Yu did it to protect them, but one had to know that this demon god was backed by the gods of the Restraining Heart camp. If they took revenge, then they would still end up in an extremely miserable state. They might even be tortured before they died. At this moment, Gu Yu naturally did not know what the people below were thinking and did not want to know. His figure slowly descended and once again arrived in front of the ice house. When the young man standing at the door saw his arrival, He quickly knelt down and began to kowtow while mumbling. Guyu felt very helpless about this. We're just doing a transaction. It's useless for you to kowtow like this. I'm definitely going to take your soul away. After using the power of qi and blood to lift the young man from the ground, Guyu stepped into the house. At this moment, the young man's mother had already regained consciousness under the restoration of the power of qi and blood. Moreover, she had already heard about Guyu from the young man. Immediately, she fell to the ground with a look of hesitation. After adjusting her posture, she began to kowtow to Guyu. Guyu was now very speechless about this world. Were they all believers? Why did they kowtow so easily? They must have all been brainwashed. He really disliked this kind of environment. Your next wish is to resurrect your father, right? Now, give me the relevant information about your father. Guyu turned his head and looked at the young man at the door and said. The young man quickly knelt down and began to describe his father's appearance and characteristics. After listening to the young man's description, Guyu nodded. However, he really could not fulfill this wish, but someone else could. In the aspect of souls, the person behind the scenes was the real expert. Thinking of this, Guyu clicked on the friend list, then clicked on Lu Wu's profile picture and sent a voice message. Dog official, I need your help. I need to find a soul now. Amazing Tribe's expectation. JPG, after waiting for a moment, a game notification rang in Guyu's mind. Game notification, detecting all the souls in your world. Generating classification list. As Guyu waited, the list of information detected by the artifact slowly appeared in front of him. The specific categories were as follows. The characteristics of the soul's strength, the soul's previous life's gender, the soul's quality. A series of classification lists could help Guyu better locate the soul that he needed to find. At this moment, Guyu began to act. He began to search according to the information provided by the young man and finally locked onto 23 souls. After asking for a while, Guyu locked onto one of the souls. Suddenly, the information of this person's soul appeared in Guyu's mind. Safin, soul status. Current location, within the reincarnation small world controlled by the ruler of the Munsa camp. Specific coordinate information. After knowing the soul coordinates of the young man's father, Guyu turned his head to look at the young man and said, I'm going to look for your father. You guys can just wait here. After thinking about it, Guyu took out a low-level spiritual material from the channel and handed it to the young man. This would at least ensure that the young man would not starve to death while he was away. The young man hesitantly took it and felt the warmth that spread from the spiritual material. His face revealed an infatuated expression. Ignoring the young man who knelt down on the ground again, Guyu stepped out of the igloo. Then, he raised his hand and waved. Suddenly, the power of blood and qi enveloped the city and isolated the extreme cold outside. Then, he tore apart the space and headed straight for the reincarnation small world of this world. After a few space shuttles, Guyu appeared in a reincarnation small world that was shrouded in fog. This place was similar to the 6 paths of reincarnation world in the underworld, but there were many differences. Guyu realized that his consciousness could completely penetrate the fog to investigate. Therefore, Guyu began to search according to the coordinates given by the game. What Guyu did not know was that at the same time he entered this small world, the ruler of this small world had also detected him and sent a distress message to the gods in the Munsa camp. At this moment, the gods of the Munsa camp were all heading towards this small world. Among them, the top combat power had the ability of the God state. It did not take much effort for Guyu to search for the soul of the young man's father. With the help of the game hints given by Lu Wu, Guyu quickly found the confused soul of the young man's father and kept it in his personal space. His behavior was undoubtedly a slap in the face of the gods of the Munsa camp. However, Guyu did not feel pressured at all. What was wrong with snatching a soul from a member of the heavenly demon army? Was there a problem? However, just as he was about to leave, countless figures appeared in front of him. They did not waste any time talking to Gu Yu and immediately launched an attack. This was because Gu Yu had violated their taboo and came to the forbidden place where their ruler was. The battle began in an instant. At this moment, Gu Yu once again turned into the demonic god. The surging power of blood and qi forced the fog in the space to retreat, and the violent killing intent and evil thoughts swept forward. Great demonic god of the underworld! The demonic god's signature ability was displayed by Gu Yu at this moment. In an instant, he turned into a form with 3 heads and 6 arms and faced the god's head-on. Boom! At the moment of the collision, Gu Yu single-handedly resisted the gods. Accompanied by his roar, the power of blood and qi rose like a flame, and most of the gods of the Mansa camp were sent flying. Although they were terrified of the oppressive feeling that Gu Yu brought to them, these demon gods bit the bullet and launched another attack. In the violent collision, the number of gods in the Mansa camp increased, and among them, there were many powerhouses who had broken through to the god state. Although there were only 5 of them, their combined combat power still made Gu Yu feel pressured. At the same time, the ruler who was hiding in the dark also began to control this small world to oppress Gu Yu. The battle lasted for a few hours, and Gu Yu had killed more than 10 Ghost Emperor Realm powerhouses. However, the number of enemies did not decrease but increased instead. Under such circumstances, Gu Yu grasped the void and wanted to tear the space to leave. This was because he could not use his full combat power to fight in this small world. However, what surprised Gu Yu was that he could not tear the space. The surrounding space had been sealed by the ruler of this small world, who wanted to keep him here and kill him. Faced with such a situation, Gu Yu felt extremely helpless. At this moment, he could only choose to burn his soul power and forcefully tear the space of this small world. Then, his figure flickered and he left. At this moment, the gods of the Mansa camp, who were already in a frenzy, chased after him. What Gu Yu did not know was that at this moment, the gods of the Kursan camp were also searching for him. The moment he appeared, the ruler of the Kursan camp sensed his presence and conveyed the information to the gods of the Kursan camp. The gods of the Kursan camp immediately gathered and chased in the direction of Gu Yu. Now, Gu Yu had to fight against the 2 strongest camps of the gods in this world. There were more than 10 godly state powerhouses and close to 10,000 Ghost Emperor peak stage powerhouses. In the midst of the chase, the gods of the 2 camps met. However, this time they did not kill each other. Instead, after a discussion, they decided to make a temporary truce and kill the foreign invaders. Gu Yu first. Gu Yu cursed in his heart. However, under the situation where he could not defeat them, he could only choose to escape. If Gu Yu really wanted to escape, the gods of this world could not do anything to him. After all, in terms of individual strength, Gu Yu was stronger than all the gods of this world, including the god kings of the 2 camp. This kind of chase lasted for a few days before the helpless Kursan camp and the gods of the Mansa camp met again. After some discussion, they finally chose to cooperate. Although they were from opposing camps, Gu Yu was an outsider and there were many unknown factors about him. Therefore, they were afraid of Gu Yu. They would not be at ease if they did not get rid of him. With the cooperation of the 2 camps, the efficiency of the chase increased. Under such circumstances, Gu Yu knew that he was no match for the deities of these 2 camps. It was not a solution for him to keep on fleeing. Under such circumstances, Gu Yu gave in. However, he did not compromise with the gods of this world, but with himself. Although what he was going to do next was embarrassing, he could not lose the face of the heavenly demon army. While escaping, Gu Yu opened his friends list. Gu Yu, group message: who is free? I need help. I'm being chased. Dog boss, I'm writing. I finally have a reader today. I promised him to write 5 million words a day, and he agreed to give me a monthly vote. Gu Yu replied to Dog, stop writing. Hurry up and save the day. I'll go back to writing after I'm done. Dog, alright boss, give me your coordinates. I'll be there immediately. Goo 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 QVQ today. Aojian, I just finished a deal. Boss Goo, give me your coordinates. Luchai, ha ha ha, Boss Goo, you're asking for help for your first deal. How embarrassing, how embarrassing. Remember to reimburse your soul coins. I'm coming. Yi swear, I've already completed 2 deals. I didn't expect Boss Goo to have yet to complete the first one. How embarrassing. However, we, the Heavenly Demon Army, must not lose our face. Send me your coordinates. Mo Lingtian, Boss Goo, send me your coordinates. My deal is very simple. There's no hurry. I'll help you complete the deal first. Reinhardt, Boss Goo, send me your coordinates. I just happened to help my boss complete a difficult mission. I'm free now. Laughing emoji. A cloud-piercing arrow, group message. Thousands of soldiers and horses came to meet. Although the players acted alone, they were always a team. They were all members of the Heavenly Demon Army. After thousands of years of war, unity had long been engraved in their hearts. At this moment, when he received Gu Yu's group message, his WeChat moments immediately exploded with activity. While laughing at Gu Yu's embarrassment, they all came to the coordinates sent by Gu Yu. Seeing the players' replies, Gu Yu finally decided not to run. At this moment, the gods who were chasing him descended around him. The demon gods from both camps did not waste any time and immediately launched an attack on Gu Yu. At this moment, Gu Yu no longer retreated. He burned his soul power and decisively activated the demonic god form. He pounced on the gods that filled the sky. During the battle, Gu Yu's wounds kept increasing. At this moment, a celestial king from Kursan's camp took advantage of the moment when Gu Yu killed a ghost emperor peak stage. He punched Gu Yu's neck and sent him flying. Looking at the injured Gu Yu tumbling in the air, the celestial king could not help but laugh. Let's see where else you can run to. At this moment, Gu Yu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. A ferocious smile appeared on his face. Are you bullying me with numbers? You better King see who has more people. Stop watching the show. I'm going to hold a grudge if you don't come out now. As Gu Yu's voice fell, countless shadows appeared behind him. Their figures slowly solidified in the air. Boss, it's not that I don't want to fight. They forced me to hide and watch you embarrass yourself. I didn't do it on purpose. The dog laughed. Gu Yu glared at the dog. He then turned to look at the celestial king in front of him, and said with a ferocious smile, "Come on, show me how awesome you are." As Gu Yu's voice fell, the aura of the players standing behind him began to rise. Their heavenly demonic cloaks fluttered in the wind. The aura of the ultimate sword will, the domineering fist will, the aura of the dragon will, and so on. Different forces converged at this moment, turning into a substantial oppressive aura that radiated forward. The fear in the hearts of Kursan and the gods from Munsa's camp grew and finally boiled. Chapter 798. Gu Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and stared coldly at the gods in front of him. However, at this moment, the gods from Kuexian's camp and Munsa's camp did not dare to make a move. If Gu Yu was alone, even if he was extremely powerful, they would find a way to take him down and eliminate the hidden danger. However, at this moment, their strength was obviously not enough. Looking at the players who were all wearing the heavenly demonic cloak, the gods from Kuexian's and Munsa's camp were completely panicked. In fact, ever since Gu Yu came to this world, he had never thought of fighting with the gods of this world. After all, there were many wishes and everyone was rushing to complete them. They all wanted to complete this order and continue in the next world. However, the gods of this world obviously did not give him any face. Since that was the case, Gu Yu did not want to be polite anymore. If you want to compete in numbers, let's compete. Master Gu, what do you think we should do? Should we kill them all or what? Aojian asked. As his voice trailed off, a sharp sword aura swept forward, causing the gods in front of him to feel pain and panic. Wait, we admit defeat. At this moment, the godly king from Ku Xian's camp was the first to admit defeat. Knowing that he would definitely lose, he gave up the idea of continuing the battle and wanted to negotiate with Gu Yu. There might be some misunderstanding between us. Can we talk? The godly king from Munsa's camp said. If you want to fight, I will fight. If you want to talk, I will talk. Who the F***ck do you think you are? You're wasting my time writing. It's not easy for me to find a reader. Guguga might run away today. Can you afford to compensate me? Sun Chi could not help but grit his teeth. Boss, kill him. At this moment, Gu Yu did not want to talk nonsense anymore. After being chased for so many days, the anger in his heart had already reached a critical point. Moreover, he had a bad impression of the gods of this world. Killing them was not a big deal. Hence, he turned around and said, "Brothers, we will reimburse the soul coins later. Kill." Hearing Gu Yu's order to kill, the players' faces revealed a ferocious smile. Corpse coffin burial. At this moment, the sky was filled with black crows that quickly surrounded the godly king from Ku Xian's camp. Then, they turned into corpse coffins and sealed him. The extremely corrosive corpse energy spread in the corpse coffins. Intense pain assaulted him from all directions. The god kings of Ku Xian's camp could not help but cry out in pain. At this time, the corpse energy was pouring into their bodies through their mouths, and the pain became even more intense. He tried to struggle, but found that he was unable to break free from the corpse coffin's shackles. Explode. As he clenched his fist, the corpse coffin began to collapse inwardly. Then, it exploded with a loud bang, and a thick corpse aura surged in the air, forming a mushroom cloud. At this time, the God King's flesh had already been corroded by the corpse energy. All that was left of him was a skeleton. Although he was not dead yet, he looked extremely wretched. After he made his move, Ao Jian and the others also took action. Sword intent, fist intent, and other nomological powers were instantly activated. Although there was no nomological spiritual qi in this world that they needed, they had reserves of spiritual qi in their bodies, so they did not have to worry about not being able to cast nomological spells. At this moment, a green light enveloped Gu Yu, and the injuries on his body rapidly healed. Then, he followed the army of players and charged towards the gods of this world. The gods of this world would never have imagined that they would welcome the twilight of the gods in such a way. It was not because of the years of war between the two camps, nor was it because of the sins they had committed against the creatures of the mortal world, nor was it because of their own depravity. It was all because of a little boy who made a wish to the heavenly devil, and the gods of this world had become obstacles and sacrifices because they had blocked the heavenly devil's way to fulfill the little boy's wish. At this moment, the twilight of the gods was a bloodbath. However, this was not a tragic epic war, but a one-sided massacre. Perhaps the gods of Ku Xian and Munsa camp could do whatever they wanted in this small world and be worshipped by the people of the world, but in the face of the players who had been fighting for many years, they could not withstand a single blow. After all, they were just frogs at the bottom of a well. How could the gods of the godly realm and Ghost Emperor realm fight against the players? As the clansmen around them died one after another, the remaining gods and demons immediately had the idea of escaping. This was because they knew that if they continued to fight like this, none of them would survive. However, this world had already been sealed by the Seven Ghost Realm. No matter how hard they tried to tear the space apart, the space was extremely stable, firmly locking them in place. The one-sided massacre lasted for about 3 hours and was about to come to an end. At this moment, the remaining demon gods had completely lost their arrogant attitude. They knelt in the ghost realm and begged for forgiveness from Gu Yu and the others. They were even willing to worship them as the new celestial kings of this world. In response, Gu Yu used the erosion of evil thoughts to respond. The last 5 gods and demons of this world were devoured by the flame of evil thoughts in fear and turned into nothingness. After doing all this, Guyu retracted the demonic god's shadow and turned to look at Sun Chi and the others helplessly. "Come on, mock me, I'll take it." Sun Chi, who was smiling, heard this and immediately became serious. "Whoever dares to mock my boss is my enemy. I'll be the first to beat him up." "Silly dog, you're the one who suggested hiding and watching the battle. I said I wanted to help, but you still pulled me and refused to let go." Lu Chai grinned. "Yes, Boss Gu, we wanted to show up for a long time, but Sun Chi refused. Your little brother is rebellious, we can't let him live." Yi Shui nodded solemnly. "Since everyone is telling the truth, I have to say something too. I was the second one to arrive. I wanted to look for you, but Sun Chi refused. He even said that he liked to see his boss being tortured." Guyu looked at Sun Chi suspiciously as he listened to everyone's serious words. "Boss, I can testify that they're all framing me. It's all fake. You can ask Ao Jian if you don't believe me, he won't lie." Sun Chi immediately let out a scream, feeling that he was the scapegoat. "They're all right," Ao Jian said coldly. Hearing Ao Jian's answer, Sun Chi, who was the scapegoat, was dumbfounded. He felt that Ao Jian had changed and he had become a liar. Moreover, when he lied, he was still so arrogant that I almost believed him. After some small talk, Guyu told Lu Chai and the others about the situation that he encountered in this world. When they heard that Guyu said that the soul quality of the person he met had reached 4.8, everyone's face showed an envious expression. Although they had just started to learn about the equivalent trade under the Dark Loss Law. Relying on the information shared in the forum, everyone had also learned a lot about the equivalent trade. To be able to reach a soul quality of 4.8 was already the best batch of souls they had encountered at this stage. A single soul like this was equivalent to the harvest of several transactions that other people would obtain. After explaining the whole story, everyone expressed that they wanted to see what a creature with a soul quality of 4.8 looked like. Therefore, everyone followed Guyu to the extremely cold territory of this world. After opening the blood and chi barrier, everyone landed outside the ice house where the teenager was. As the door of the ice house was smashed by the demon soldiers, the appearance of Guyu and the others quickly alerted the teenager and his mother. The two immediately stumbled out of the ice house, knelt in front of Guyu, and began to kowtow and worship devoutly. Seeing this scene, a trace of helplessness appeared on Guyu's face. He then looked at the teenager and said, "I have brought your father's soul back. We have an equivalent trade, you don't have to do this." Halfway through his sentence, Guyu suddenly did not want to continue because the teenager was not listening at all. He was still kowtowing hard. He was like a merciless kowtowing robot. Meanwhile, Lu Chai and the others looked at the teenager curiously, trying to find something special about him. They wanted to know why his soul quality was so high. Since coming into contact with the equivalent trade until now, the players had learned a lot about it. Back when the Devil Clan dominated the Outworld, they once spread the equivalent trade system in the Outworld and harvested special souls from all over the world. This was also the reason why the method of building the wishing altar was still popular in many worlds at this stage. However, even back then, building the wishing altar did not necessarily mean that one could summon the members of the Devil Clan to fulfill their wishes. This was also clear to the players that only those special souls would be recognized by the wishing altar, and then the wish information would be sent to the members of the Devil Clan. However, until now, neither Lu Wu nor the players knew what was the reason for the birth of special souls and why they were special. Perhaps the Devil Clan knew, but this clan had long disappeared in the history of the Outworld. At this moment, looking at the teenager, their eyes were filled with doubts, trying to get an answer. However, no matter how they looked at the teenager, there was nothing special about him. He did not have 3 heads and 6 arms, a green face and fangs. he was completely an ordinary person. At this moment, Guyu took out the soul of the teenager's father from his personal space. He could not do what he wanted to do next, so he could only open his friend list and ask for help from the stupid officials. After receiving Guyu's message, Lu Wu immediately activated the remote control function of the artifact. At this moment, the soul in Guyu's hand floated up. With the burning of the soul power, it slowly solidified and finally formed a body with the help of the spiritual materials. After doing all this, Guyu still had one last wish that he had not helped the teenager to fulfill, which was to help the teenager become a grand sorcerer. After completing this task, the teenager would also die. His soul would enter the devil's contract and be compressed into a special soul power. Sighing, Guyu thought for a while and said, "I'll give you a week to get along with your parents. After a week, I'll help you become a grand sorcerer and take your soul away." Upon hearing this, the teenager raised his head, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, he nodded gratefully. In this world where life was as worthless as grass, the teenager thought it was worth it to exchange his life for so many wishes. Seeing this scene, Lu Chai and the others could not help but fall silent. As if to ease the atmosphere, Lu Chai took the lead and said, "Big Boss Gu, remember to reimburse the soul coins. I'll go back first. Recently, in a small world, there was a fool who wished for his country's football team to enter the World Cup. It's time for me to go back and play football. It's 2F** King hard. Boss, it's time for me to go back and write my story. I'm going to update another 5 million words tonight. Just hold on for a little longer. If I can't do it, I'll sacrifice all the readers in that world to the heavens. We'll all die together," Sun Chi said while gritting his teeth. Let's go, let's go. Contact me if there's anything." At this moment, everyone bid farewell to Guyu one by one. Then, they tore the space apart and left. Guyu's progress in this world had come to an end. However, from today onwards, there would no longer be any gods or demons that were above all things in this world. The era of the gods had ended, and the revival of the creatures in the mortal world had begun. In the future, everything that happened during this period would be known as the twilight of the gods by the later generations. Of course, as history progressed, there would be countless versions of the truth. However, the man who ended the era of the gods had a large number of believers in this world and became the only true god. Hundreds of years later, prosperous cities were built one after another. In the center of each city, there would be a statue of a man wearing a heavenly devil's cape, who was worshipped by the people. Chapter 799. It was like Lu Wu could control soul power, but he had to rely on artifacts to do so. In order to figure it out, Lu Wu began to busy himself with various experiments on special soul power. During the process, Emo Xiaoxin's eyes showed a hint of desire. However, Emo Xiaoxin was obviously playful and began to create all kinds of things. How terrifying! The cost of condensing the Dark Loss rule was obvious. It would be useless after a few uses, so Lu Wu could not afford it no matter how many soul coins he had. Super Awesome Fruit Knife, Supreme Artifact. In the artifact, Lu Wu could use soul power to simulate the Dark Loss rule to control the special soul power. Regarding the Law of Darkness, I've already posted about it on the forum. Just as he expected, after the cigarette made of special soul power was used, the special soul power slowly flowed into the body. In fact, Lu Wu did not have much hope for the players to try it. Therefore, using ordinary soul power to condense the Dark Loss rule was not feasible. Therefore, he only had a glimmer of hope for the players to try it. It was fine in the artifact's space as it could be retrieved even if it collapsed. The only disadvantage of the special soul power was that it was more troublesome to obtain. It could not be obtained by killing monsters like ordinary soul power. However, after brandishing it a few times, the weapon collapsed with a loud bang, unable to exist for long. While the players were discussing it, Eric, Tesla, and other players had already entered the artifact space, and began to study the Dark Loss rule. However, there was a problem now. How to speed up the forging of the Dark Loss rule, or how to use the special soul power without the Dark Loss rule. Could it be that the Dark Loss rule forged with ordinary soul power could withstand the forging of a very small amount of special soul power and ensure that it would not collapse? Forum notification. Crayon Shinchan has been banned for 24 hours. Crayon_Shinchan. Dog official, I don't know anything except fighting, you have to work hard, big meat shield smokes. This picture should suit your current mood. Lastly, the one who gave me my account is a pig, laughing emoji. Filled with excitement, Mo Xiaoxin chose to exit the artifact space and then swung the cigarette in a circle. Although the players were currently running around in different worlds, fulfilling other people's wishes and harvesting special soul power, Lu Wu had simulated it. This made Mo Xiaoxin confused, as he could not understand what was going on. Evolving at high speed, I just finished a mission. I'm going to try, but I'm not confident. Tonggua's arrogant face. JPG. Therefore, it had a lot of limitations. Yi Shuer is the cutest. Ha ha ha, Dog Crayon, why don't you continue to be arrogant? Come on, say something, criticize people, have fun, laughing emoji. Content. Without the artifact, even if Lu Wu had a deep understanding of soul power, he would not be able to use it. After a series of tests, Lu Wu was stunned by the effects of the special soul power. Extortion. He had to extort billions of soul coins from the officials, or else he would refuse to reveal the formula. However, because he had not mastered the essence of creation, and creating items was not an easy task, the things he created seemed to have cool special effects, but the internal structure was often simple, and it could not be completely shaped. Soon it would collapse. That was, after using special soul power several times to control the pseudo-darkness laws, the pseudo-darkness laws would instantly collapse, and wouldn't be able to exist for long. Therefore, with a playful attitude, he once again condensed the lost law of darkness and began to use this law to create items. After simulating a scene in the artifact space, Lu Wu started with the simplest physical skills, followed by spells, then curses, and other abilities. At this time, in the artifact space, countless players were conducting experiments in full swing. After noting down the weapon's information, Mo Xiaoxin chuckled, grabbed the weapon, and waved it in the artifact space. But this time, what surprised him was that the smoke he was waiting for didn't dissipate. It was still solid. Take the civilizations that developed technology as an example. There were many big shots in the scientific research among these forces. If they could easily research the creation method of the lost law, they would have succeeded a long time ago. However, he still failed. Invincible_loneliness. I don't know anything about this, I only know how to fight and kill. Goodbye, see King Fist salute. JPG. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light bloomed in the artifact space, attracting the attention of many players. At this moment, Mo Xiaoxin knew that he had succeeded. His guess was right. The moment the thought appeared, Mo Xiaoxin went crazy. In the subsequent attempts, he encountered the same bottleneck as Lu Wu. The lost law of darkness forged with ordinary soul power was not only suitable for simulation, but it could also withstand the use of a very small amount of special soul power to forge items. For example, small items such as cigarettes. From the information obtained at this stage, Lu Wu knew that the Devil Clan did not use spiritual power during battles. Instead, they completely relied on special soul power to drive their spells. After all, there were a group of the top scientists in the three realms among the players. The reason was simple. If it could be easily researched, the ultimate law would have been widespread. Invincible meat shield armor, sky-piercing spear, infinite space-traversing speed shoes. Lu Wu was curious about the power of spells that were released with special soul power. First, he had to experiment on the spells, which was also the most important step. Watermelon_Taro. I caught the evidence of the dog officials slacking off. Screenshot as proof, laughing emoji. Lu Wu immediately opened a post in the forum. After trying dozens of tools, Mo Xiaoxin suddenly chuckled and condensed a cigarette. He held it in his mouth with a dispirited look on his face. In the experiment, he first created a weapon made of special soul power. Mo Xiaoxin was not depressed after all, he was already mentally prepared. Therefore, it was not feasible to rely on quantity to achieve qualitative changes. Lu Wu was even more shocked by the next test. At this moment, Mo Xiaoxin was nervous, afraid that he would be kicked out of the artifact space by the dog officials behind the scenes. He had always been ahead of all the players when it came to seeking death. At this moment, a ridiculous scene suddenly appeared in Mo Xiaoxin's mind. The real Dark Lost Law had to be forged with special soul power. It was the same for special soul power. To control special soul power, one must have the Dark Lost Law. Otherwise, special soul power could not be used. Since ordinary soul power could create items, so could special soul power. That was what Mo Xiaoxin thought. He simply could not afford to wait. The artifact did not have the ability to compress soul power. It was not as simple as condensing soul power, but changing the internal arrangement of soul power to make it into a new substance. As the players collected special soul power in various worlds, Lu Wu also began to study the use of special soul power. Weapon Forger. Mo Xiaoxin to really forge a Dark Lost Law, it would consume 100 trillion special soul power. Lu Wu was only trying to use part of the special soul power. After posing, he held a cigarette and waited for it to dissipate. However, Mo Xiaoxin was just playing around, so he did not take it seriously. A big wolf dog. I'm going crazy. I want to destroy the world now. I'd like to ask everyone who knows how to write novels. Kyuki wailing. JPG. To solve this problem, part of the artifact space was temporarily opened up in the forum. Everyone could try and simulate it internally. Lu Wu also began to try to compress ordinary soul power and turn it into special soul power. The same spell was used, but the consumption of special soul power was reduced by more than 100 times. However, its power was increased by more than 100 times. However, the simulated Dark Lost Law in the artifact space could not be brought out of the outside world. It was just a fake thing. After many failed attempts, Lu Wu was really troubled. After thinking for a while, he decided to make a post in the forum to see what the players could come up with. Lu Wu began to try again and again, trying to find a shortcut to forge the Dark Lost Law. In terms of cultivation, the special soul power provided a cultivation speed that was more than 100 times faster than ordinary soul power. Compared to spiritual energy, it was more than 10,000 times faster. At this stage, the only problem he had to face was that he could not use the special soul power in the outside world because there was no control of the Dark Lost Law. However, since this supreme law could help the Devil Clan reach the top of the food chain in the extraterrestrial world, it must have its own advantages. In this regard, after reading the manual of the Dark Lost Law, he used the soul power in the artifact space to simulate a pseudo-Dark Lost Law tie according to Lu Wu's instructions. Using the artifact space to simulate the Dark Lost Law, Lu Wu got busy. For example, Eric Tesla and the others, those who could be brought to the extraterrestrial world, were all outstanding players, so he could totally brainstorm. Every slash of the sword was overflowing with light. It was really cool. Weapon details. 1/999999, an artifact you deserve to have for chopping melons and vegetables. However, the quality of ordinary soul power could not be compared to the special soul power. The pseudo-Dark Lost Law forged in the simulation would collapse after a few uses, and the internal soul power would be lost. If King succeeded? Regarding the use of special soul power, let's brainstorm. OP, give me a ton of money, official. At this time, Mo Xiaoxin was also trying to forge the Dark Lost Law like everyone else. Especially the infinite space god Speed Shoes. he really wanted it. It was too convenient for him to escape. In Emo Xiaoxin's opinion, this kind of dark loss law obviously could not be used. Otherwise, it would collapse after a few spells. The wasted soul power would make one's scalp tingle, and the stingy dog officials would probably go crazy. To verify if it was really possible, Emo Xiaoxin lit up the cigarette. Before the battle, all the players dispiritedly smoked to replenish their special soul power, one cigarette after another. As for the consumption of the special soul power, Lu Wu did not have to worry about it as soon as the artifact simulation ended. If a God Realm creature relied entirely on the special soul power during the battle, it would be extremely easy for him to fight someone of a higher level. The cosplay meat shield dispiritedly smoked. Some of the players were seriously trying to forge the Dark Loss Law, while some of the idiotic players were simulating the control of the special soul power to cast spells. They were having a lot of fun. This undoubtedly gave Lu Wu a headache, which meant that the special soul power that he had collected could not be used at all. President of the Demolition Officers. I'm playing against the Korean team tonight. I'm already in the arena. Help me luck. If I lose, I'll kill my pig teammates on livestream. P.S. Today, China will host the first match of the 2020 Olympic Games qualifier in Tokyo against the Korean team. The match has already begun. What kind of concept was this? Lu Wu could only use 2 words to describe the power of the ultimate law. There were many intelligent races in the extraterrestrial world, and there were countless who were smarter than humans. However, if he used ordinary soul power to condense the Dark Loss Law in the outside world, it would definitely be a huge loss if it collapsed after a few uses. After all, it was 100 trillion. In an instant, the special soul power in his body surged and was released as he punched forward. After dozens of failures, Emo Xiaoxin gradually gave up, feeling that he did not have the talent in this aspect. As he learned more about the effects of the special soul power, Lu Wu's desire for the Dark Loss Law grew. With the current speed of the players collecting the special soul power, it would probably take an era, and it might not even be enough. Chapter 800. Could it be that there was something wrong with the Dark Rule Libra? This was a Xianxia world that focused on cultivation and growth. Although most of the creatures here did not have a high cultivation level, they had great potential for growth. The biggest goal of many immortal cultivators was to break through the void and leave this world, heading to the legendary immortal world. With disbelief, they clicked on the video attachment in the post. Some missions could take hundreds of years of hard work. Realizing the difficulty of the mission, he thought of asking the players for help. That's right. If you know the price, tell us your wish. Let's not waste time. He nodded. This clearly showed the difficulty of this mission. However, at this stage they could only make small items. They could not make large special soul power items. After all, there was no real dark rule. As they waited, the powerhouses present felt a little uneasy. Special soul power shop, this world has given birth to a devil lord. He is too strong. If he continues to wreak havoc, we will not be spared. We are willing to use our souls in exchange for the future stability of our sect and people. We hope you can help us get rid of the Devil Lord, said the man in the lead respectfully. After some testing, Emo Xiaoxin realized that as long as the special soul power consumed was less than 10 small items, they could be stabilized after being created. The pseudo-dark rule generated by the artifact in the air was completely bearable. Watch the video for details. As an evil force, the meat shield was indeed decadent and smoking. Time passed. Just when everyone thought that the wish had failed, the altar suddenly emitted a red light, and a figure appeared. Seeing the child's cultivation level, he was shocked. This was because, apart from a small number of ordinary souls, nearly a third of them had very high quality, with the average being around 3. Character superpower. Tomb of the God, inherited an ancient tomb of the gods that was formed at the beginning of the Lingtian world. He suspected that he would be dead the moment he made a move. The players were crazily complaining about the idiotic mission that they had received and how unbearable it was. "Stupid official, come in quickly and see what I have found." Creator. Crayon Shinchan. Hearing this, the man gritted his teeth and said, but before that, he planned to investigate the origins of this demon lord. President of the Demolition Officers. I've already sacrificed all of my useless teammates from the soccer team to the heavens. I'm preparing to build a new team. The only problem now is that they want me to go to jail. They say that murder is against the law. I'm curious. Go's question face. JPG. The powerhouses that he had met were basically at the Ghost King realm. As for the Ghost Emperor realm, he had not met one yet. For this discovery, Mo Xiaoxin immediately posted it on the forum and announced it. Thinking of this, he secretly activated his analysis ability and was ready to probe the target's strength. Experimental video attached. However, forging the true lost laws would probably take an epoch. They would have to wait for sufficient resources like the Spirit King before they could forge. This was unrealistic for them after all, as time was of the essence. Under such circumstances, the players' enthusiasm for the wishing quest had increased. Lu Wu was looking forward to the players' next performance. "Tell me your wish." He spoke again. Soon, he found the target, the Demon Lord, who was sleeping in the blood pool in the main hall. As the #1 theorist in this forum, I tirelessly conducted a 24-hour special soul power experiment in order to complete the stupid official's quest. In the end, my hard work paid off and I succeeded with my extraordinary talent. 3 days ago, Mount of Despair in the Lingtian world. Knowing that his opponent might be difficult to deal with, he did not choose to expose himself. Instead, he sneaked into the city. Players could use these small items to absorb the special soul power into their bodies. It could be used for cultivation or to cast spells. A collective wish? He appeared here and looked at the wish message. His face showed a hint of confusion. It was a 3-year-old child floating in the blood pool. He squinted his eyes and held something that looked like a pacifier in his mouth. He did not look threatening at all. A 3-year-old middle-stage Ghost Emperor? What kind of F***king potential was this? It was comparable to the players. Buyout for me. Official. I didn't expect the Dark Rule condensed by ordinary soul power to be useful. Although it is a small item, at least it can use the special soul power. Not bad. Tip to the original poster. 10 million soul coins. The person wore a black cloak and carried a dark red coffin on his back. He looked serious. That was a more brutal battlefield. It was not as beautiful as they had imagined. Back when they played Battle Royale, only the top group of players could reach the Ghost Emperor realm in 3 years. Most of them were still in the Ghost King and Ghost General realm. With his strength of the Divine realm, it was natural that he would not be discovered as he moved stealthily. Therefore, he entered the Demon Lord Hall with ease, which was also the area where his assassination target was located. What happened next shocked them. Crayon Shinchan had really thought of a way to use the special soul power. Without the help of the gods behind the altar, they knew that they would definitely die. Not only would they not be able to escape the disaster, but their sects and clansmen would also suffer. Character introduction: the son of luck of this world. Protected by all the rules of the world, he has unlimited growth potential. He has cultivated to the middle stage of the Ghost Emperor realm at the age of 3. He has unlimited potential. However, at this moment, he suddenly posted on the forum asking for help, which attracted the attention of many players. Dark Pigeon, son of the dimension. How could it be played like this? At this moment, almost 1/10 of the powerhouses of this world had gathered on Despair Peak. A large wolf dog. I'm even worse off. I'm still in the middle of my first transaction. I can't even count how many words I've written. I haven't updated for 3 days. I'm ready to let all the readers of this world die with me. They don't know how to appreciate it. It's the fault of this world, not me. Surprised clansmen kneel and wipe tears. JPG, I'm in despair. I can't play anymore. What kind of idiotic mission did I accept? I'm isolated. Because the problem of the special soul power had been solved, the special soul power in the hands of the players could finally be used. Lu Wu also noticed this post. When he clicked on it and read the content, he was stunned. Although the special soul power that could be absorbed into the body after each use of the condensed cigarette was extremely small, not even enough to perform a spell, a few more would be enough. They knelt on the ground and built an altar according to an ancient ritual. Now, they collectively prayed to the god on the other side of the altar, watermelon_taro. Dog crayon, you got it by luck. You're awesome. 2 days later, he arrived at the demonic Sky City, which was the main city where the Devil Lord resided, according to the information provided by the petitioners. Yes, you didn't hear it wrong. I got the method to use the special soul power. From entering the hall to finding the target, the whole process was too easy. It was so easy that he couldn't believe it. In order to verify this, Mo Xiaoxin entered the artifact space again. The function of the special soul power shop was to convert the special soul power in the hands of the players. Lu Wu would take 10% of the processing fee. Peppa_Boar, I'm drunk. Let me tell you something strange. I just received a wish mission in a small world. It asked me to assassinate someone, but the bastard who made the wish refused to use his own soul as a bargaining chip. He said he would give me $80 million. The target was Tai Lang Pu. What use do I have for US dollars? Go_question_mark. JPG. During the weighing, he found it unbelievable that the side with a soul quality of almost 300 was slowly rising content, he did not waste any time. An equivalent exchange mark appeared on his forehead and he began to weigh. After looking at the analysis of the petitioners around him, he was shocked again. It's you guys who are praying? Do you know the price? Not long after Mo Xiaoxin solved the problem and published the post, Lu Wu opened a new function in the shop. Character personality. Do as you please this time, he began to record the process of his attempt. The wish missions that he complained about would also be included in the complete collection of idiotic missions to warn all players that not every mission could be accepted. There were 32 items, such as candy, chocolate, fruits, cigarettes, drinks, and so on. Are you the god behind the altar? A man in the Ghost King realm stepped forward and asked respectfully. After discovering that the Dark Rule, which was condensed from ordinary soul power in the artifact space, could withstand a small amount of items condensed from special soul power, Mo Xiaoxin knew that he had unintentionally solved a problem that even the stupid officials were troubled by. Subsequently, he tried all the small items one by one, such as candy, chocolate, and so on. However, he was careful not to show his face. After all, he knew his own identity. Invincible_loneliness. The dog crayon has shown what it means to be courting death. You give him an inch and he wants a foot. I suggest that the stupid officials ban him forever, deprive him of his soul coins and account. Exile his soul in the artifact space for 100 eras, laughing emoji. However, at this moment, this was the only hope that everyone had. In Mo Xiaoxin's opinion, this was also a disguised solution to the problem of not being able to use special soul power without the real Dark Rule. After doing all this, Lu Wu felt that the players had a new opportunity to develop. We already know the price. We need souls as sacrifices to complete the mission. Now, as long as a player bought such items in the shop, the Dark Rule in the artifact space would be activated to help the player create special soul power items. However, what the cultivators in this world did not know was that the so-called immortal world was just an extraterrestrial world. This was the first time that he had encountered a group prayer incident. As he thought about this, his interest was piqued. He immediately said in a deep voice, the forum chat went from praising the dog crayon at the beginning to a thread of ridicule. Although he was shocked by the growth potential of the Devil Lord, What puzzled Hu He was that the little brat looked like he could be killed easily. How could he be worth 300 special soul power points? At this moment, the forum was also discussing the usage of special soul power. Mo Xiaoxin's post immediately attracted the attention of many players. However, Mo Xiaoxin also found that the cigarette was the most effective. It could stabilize the consumption of special soul power at the maximum limit of 10. To put it nicely, it was used as a reserve for forging with the real Dark Rule. Along the way, what surprised Hu He was that the creatures in this world generally did not have high combat power. Crayon Shinchan replied to give me money. Official, catch the dog official, 10 million is not enough. At least 5 billion soul coins. Hurry up and pay, Big Meat Shield Smoke. JPG, Mad Scientist. Awesome, the dog crayon finally did something good. Tip, 0.0001 soul coins. As this ritual was too ancient, no one knew exactly how long it could be traced back. Therefore, they did not know whether it would succeed or not. Although the fundamental problem was not solved in the video, at least they found a way to use special soul power. Hu He did a simple calculation. If this wish was fulfilled, he could exchange for about 30 cigarettes of Big Meat Shield. Chapter 801. After observing the little devil master dark pigeon for a while, Hu He was ready to make his move. No matter what, he would know once he tried. Thinking of this, Hu He waved his hand, and a stream of corpse energy entangled the dark pigeon. At this moment, the sleeping dark pigeon suddenly opened its eyes. It raised its hand and slapped in the direction of the corpse energy. The blood pool beneath it was immediately rolled up and welcomed the corpse energy. Chi! The sound of melting was heard. The blood pool and the corpse energy were quickly corroded upon contact, but the corpse energy could not penetrate the blood pool and attack the dark pigeon in a short time. At this moment, the dark pigeon levitated like a startled rabbit. Its sharp eyes began to scan the surroundings, trying to find the attacker. However, with its ability, how could it find He who was far more powerful than it? Realizing that something was wrong, the dark pigeon immediately wanted to escape. Where are you going? At this moment, He patted the corpse soul bag. Hidorigami's figure suddenly appeared behind the dark pigeon. Its blood-red palm suddenly grabbed the top of its skull. Feeling the pressure coming from behind, the dark pigeon's face instantly turned pale. It tried to escape, but found that it was locked in place by the pressure coming from behind. Could not break free at all. Seeing this scene, He could not help but laugh. He did not expect to get 300 special soul points so easily. It was really unexpected. Originally, he thought that the plot would be very complicated and he might have to call for help. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. Lines of law strings appeared out of thin air and wrapped around the surface of Hidorigami's zombie spirit, binding it to the ground and making it unable to break free. Seeing this, He suddenly remembered that this guy was the son of luck. So, he quickly summoned more than 30 zombie spirits and locked them on the dark pigeon again. He was ready to kill it in one go to avoid any accident. However, at this moment, the dark pigeon's figure floated up, broke through the dome of the hall, and began to run for its life. At this moment, it had already realized that it was no match for the assassin. It could not even fight against one of the more than 30 zombie spirits that it had just summoned. So, it chose to run without hesitation. However, how could He let it do as it wished? His figure flashed and he chased after it. In the blink of an eye, he stood in front of the dark pigeon. Why do you want to kill me? Looking at who was carrying the coffin on his back, the little pigeon asked in a flustered and exasperated manner. I don't need a reason to kill you. I just don't like you. He said indifferently. He raised his hand and a zombie soul formation appeared, trapping the little pigeon inside. You forced my hand. Little dark pigeon, who was wearing a doo-doo, glared at He. Then, it reached into its doo-doo and took out a small golden shovel. Seeing this shovel, He's heart skipped a beat. because he felt an extremely strong and familiar aura from the shovel, he immediately activated his analysis ability. God-breaking spade, divine item. Item details. It was born from the Holy Spirit force at the beginning of the world. It has the ability to break spells and seals. Looking at the content of the analysis, he came to a realization. It turned out to be the Holy Spirit energy. It was the same source of energy that the dog official had used to create the three realms. At that moment, he had an idea about the golden shovel. Wasn't this custom made for me? Now that he had everything, he just lacked a shovel to break the seal. Looking at he's greedy eyes, the little pigeon pointed at him angrily. Just you wait, you're dead. After saying that, the little pigeon clenched its fists and shouted to the sky, Tomb of God! As soon as he finished speaking, an unbelievable scene unfolded before he's eyes. A new domain was rapidly forming inside the zombie energy formation. It kept expanding outwards, crushing the zombie energy formation that he had set up. The divine aura was faintly discernible, and tombstones appeared in the new domain. From these tombstones, he felt a strong aura. Each tombstone had a power that was no weaker than that of the gods. Looking around, there were hundreds of tombstones like this. At that moment, the little pigeon entered the domain of the tomb of God. It looked around, then lifted the golden shovel and shoveled at one of the tombstones while shouting, Dad! Come out, your son is being bullied. You old fart, come out now. Shoveling after shoveling, he was stunned. The tombstone was shoveled open, revealing a coffin inside. Realizing that something unexpected was going to happen, he immediately manipulated the zombie spirit to break the domain of the tomb of God. But at that moment, the coffin shattered, and a dignified man wearing a purple dragon robe emerged. Dad, don't sleep, your son is going to die. The little dark pigeon shouted nervously at the man in the purple robe, who was still in a deep sleep. As if he heard the cry of the little pigeon, the dignified man slowly opened his eyes. He first looked at the little pigeon, then at he. His eyes became sharp at that moment. Then, his figure suddenly walked out of the domain of the tomb of God and pounced at he. You're courting death. He did not hesitate and decisively summoned Yuanshu's zombie spirit to confront him. Two fists and two palms collided in the air. Accompanied by the vibration of space, the two figures fought together. Yuanshu's zombie spirit had now reached the divine state, and the little pigeon's father was also in the divine state. Their strength was actually on par. After fighting for a while, he was ready to summon a few more zombie spirits to help Yuanshu kill the pigeon's father. However, at that moment, the pigeon's father suddenly retreated into the domain of the tomb of God. Then, he turned to look at the little pigeon with a serious face and said, Hurry up and dig up your grandpa, I'm no match for him. The little pigeon heard this and looked disgusted. Then, it spat on its left and right hands, raised the golden shovel and smashed it on the next tombstone. Grandpa, you old fart, hurry up and come out. Your son and grandson are being bullied. How can you still sleep? While shouting, the little pigeon shoveled fiercely and dug up the grandpa's tombstone in no time. As the coffin shattered, the figure of a white-haired old man appeared inside. Seeing this scene, he was dumbfounded. How could it be like this? Could it be that the entire tomb of God's domain buried the 18 generations of this kid's ancestors? Bah, probably hundreds of generations. While he was thinking about it, the white-haired old man and the man in the purple robe flew out of the domain of the tomb of God at the same time and flew toward him. They looked like they were going to fight to the death with him. Seeing this, he's face turned cold. He controlled the rest of the 30-odd zombie spirits that were besieging the tomb of God's domain to confront them. These 30-odd zombie spirits all had the strength of the divine state, and the little pigeon's father and grandfather were only in the divine state. After fighting for a while, they retreated into the domain of the tomb of God's domain in embarrassment. Then, they turned to look at the little pigeon and shouted in unison, Little bastard, get your great-grandpa out to hold the fort. Seeing this scene, the little pigeon didn't talk nonsense. After spitting on both hands, it raised the golden shovel and went to the next tombstone. Before the shovel fell, it shouted, "Let's go! Let's go! Great-grandpa, you old fart! Your son, grandson, and great-grandson are all being bullied, and you can still sleep. Don't you have a conscience?" Following a series of clanging sounds, the tombstone cracked open, revealing a blackened skeleton inside. There was still a soul fire burning inside. Seeing this scene, he was too tired to complain. In the field of tomb digging, he had never met a worthy opponent, and he had never been convinced by anyone. But today, he had learned something new. Chapter 802. He had seen ruthless people before, but he had never seen someone as ruthless as Xian-go. He thought that he was ruthless enough. He often dug up people's ancestral graves and manipulated their ancestors to beat up their descendant. He was extremely wicked. However, Xian-go had really opened his eyes. He actually dug up his own ancestors to fight him. How cruel! Up until now, his zombie army of 500 had been sent out. However, to his despair, Xian-go had also dug up more than 100 ancestors. The oldest one had already reached the peak of the ancient god realm. He even suspected that if the fight continued, this bastard would really dig out all his ancestors. Maybe he could even dig out the super antiques of the great emperor realm to support him. He had been full of confidence at the beginning, but now he was doubting his life. He could not fight anymore. He thought that with the zombie army in his hands, he could be considered as the number one among the players besides the dog officials. He thought that he would not meet any opponents in other small world. However, reality slapped him hard in the face today. As an intruder, he had to face the Son of Luck. Even he could not do anything about the Xian-go that dug up his ancestors. In terms of combat power, the Xian-go that dug up his ancestors was obviously stronger than him. He did not even need to refine them. He could just dig them up and use them. Furthermore, the ancestors that were dug out were not only stronger than the previous generation, but there were also more of them. This was the Son of Luck. He was protected by the world and the ancestors. In this world, he was practically invincible. No wonder all the experts in this world could not subdue him. He suspected that at this rate, the dog officials would have to personally deal with the last ancestor. Otherwise, all the players might not be able to beat him. Perhaps even the dog officials might not be able to beat him. Because as the Xian-go continued to dig, the combat power of the ancestors increased infinitely. He was also confused at the moment. Anyway, he could not beat him now. Watching the zombie warriors explode one by one, turning into zombie energy and returning to the zombie energy bag, he had no more ideas. He was ready to retreat. "You want to escape? Have you asked my ancestors?" At this time, the Xian-go began to shout arrogantly, "Ancestors, you can't let him go. Ancestors, you can't let him go. He wants to kill me. Think about it carefully. If I die, your bloodline will be severed. Imagine the pain of having no descendants." Hearing the cry of the little pigeon, the attacks of the ancestors of generations suddenly became more ferocious. He burst into tears. "You bastard brat, I was already wicked enough when I used other people's ancestors to threaten my opponents, but you're even worse, directly threatening your own ancestors." He couldn't afford to offend them. Society. Thinking of this, he decisively slipped away. He recalled his zombie spirit and started running. The infuriated little pigeon immediately roared again. Suddenly, the elders that had been dug out began to chase after he. The pursuit and interception of the entire world began. During this period, he was almost killed several times. His mental state was on the verge of exploding. He had no choice but to post this message on the forum in hopes of getting help from the players. "I'm in despair. I can't play anymore. What kind of idiotic mission did I accept? I'm going into isolation." Author. Taoist Corpse Hunter content. These few days, I thought that I had gotten a wish mission that was easy to complete and had a great reward. However, when I tried it, I realized how *TTY this mission was. Wiping tears. JPG in amazement. The opponent was too scary. As one of the most popular players, who he's post attracted the attention of a large number of players. Crayon_Shinchan. After reading your post, I'm dying of laughter. Demon King, you've met your match. Let me give you a suggestion. If he dug out his own ancestors, you should dig out his ancestors too. Let's have a dark pigeon ancestor battle, laughing emoji. Taoist Corpse Hunter replied to Crayon_Shinchan. I've thought about it, but I can't. His family's ancestral grave is a territory. Only he can dig it out. It would take me a long time to break it open. This is the first time I've seen a cheat that carries an ancestral grave with him. See King's angry face. JPG. Watermelon_Taro. Haha. A super cheat that carries an ancestral grave with him. Nothing is too strange in the outside world. I thought that my horizons had been broadened and I would be able to remain calm in the face of any cheat. I didn't expect there to be such a despicable cheat. Ha ha ha, laughing emoji. _large_wolfdog. You can't beat him? Dig out his ancestral grave? What kind of godly operation is this? This plot is not bad. I'm going to write a novel with this. Let's hope it succeeds this time. Chio's expectant face. JPG. Give me _overflow. Official, I've just investigated the world you're in. Let me explain to you. The specific reason is that every generation of Dark Pigeon's ancestors are the strongest in that world. The accumulation of luck in this generation of Dark Pigeon has reached its peak. Therefore, he has become the one and only son of luck in this world. Not only is he protected by the luck of the world, but none of his ancestors have died. The strongest one has already broken through the Emperor Realm and reached the Void Realm. As the ancestor of Dark Pigeon, this person has made a name for himself in the outside world. You've kicked an iron plate. Laughing emoji. Taoist Corpse Hunter replied to give me _overflow. Official, that's 300 special soul points. Dog official, save me. Big Meat Shield Decadent Smoke. JPG. Give me _overflow. Official, I wanted to come and help, but after seeing the picture you posted, I lost interest. See King's disgusted face. JPG. Who he's encounter sparked a discussion among the players in the forum. It was not that the players thought that Hu He's opponent was too scary. After all, they had encountered opponents at the Void Realm before. For example, when they fought against the alien army, the alien queen's strength had reached the Void Realm. At the moment, the hottest topic among the players was Hu He's opponent's wolf destruction cheat. The players could not help but laugh. The grave digger had met someone even more ruthless than him, someone who dug his own ancestral grave. However, many players in the forum expressed their desire to help him overcome this difficulty. Some of them had even formed a team. Hu He was looking forward to it. Even if he could not defeat his opponent, he did not believe that with the player's unlimited resurrection ability, they could not handle that 3-year-old brat. The war between the grave digger and the grave digger had begun. This was destined to be a long war. Both sides had many trump cards. One side had an ancestor cheat, while the other side had an unlimited resurrection cheat. One side was fighting on their home ground with luck protecting them, while the other side had soul coins as support. They had never been afraid of a protracted war. With the arrival of the player's army, the chaos in this world became even more chaotic. The so-called powerhouses of this world were merely decorations in front of the Son of Luck, Xian Go, and the players. They had no influence and could not influence the outcome of the war. They would be the main characters in this war. Just as the players were about to join forces to help Hu He beat up the 3-year-old brat, Xian Go, for the sake of their reputation, Lu Wu, who was in the Glittering World's Heavenly Demon's encampment, met a visitor. At this moment, outside the heavenly demon's encampment, an extremely large interstellar fleet appeared out of thin air. Lu Wu, who sensed the commotion, walked out of the encampment. He raised his head and saw a blue beam of light from the largest flagship. Then, a figure descended along the blue beam of light and landed in front of him. This person's height was no different from an ordinary person's, but the surface of his body was covered with a layer of silver metal. Under the blue beam of light, dots of starlight were refracted. He looked very futuristic and sci-fi. "Hello, intruder!" At this moment, the silver metal man suddenly looked at Lu Wu and smiled. Hearing this, Lu Wu already knew who this person was. He immediately asked with a smile, "What's wrong with you?" He smiled and asked, "Zero?" Chapter 803. By the way, what's the ultimate rule in your hand? That was the decision he made when the first self-thinking question appeared in his mind. P.S. For this foreshadowing, please refer to Chapter 772. When Lu Wu and the players destroyed the base of the Heavenly Armament Legion, the mastermind who chose to self-destruct bid farewell to the highest authority, Zero. Losing more benefits in order to get compensation was too emotional in Zero's opinion. Therefore, Zero thought it would be beneficial for both parties to let Lu Wu reveal his secret. Hearing Lu Wu say his name, Ling said with an indifferent expression, "You're right." Then, after searching through Lu Wu's facial expression and the information about the Heavenly Demon Army, a trace of surprise flashed in Zero's eyes. First, you have to compensate 10 times the loss. Second, you and your Heavenly Demon Army will be annihilated. I heard that you have an ultimate rule, Lu Wu asked curiously. At that moment, he suddenly realized that Lu Wu seemed to have something he wanted. What are you talking about? The way they evolved was also the same, which was to constantly modify their bodies and upgrade themselves. From Life 1.0 to a higher level, step by step. Looking at Zero leaving, Lu Wu suddenly said, however, Zero was different. Zero's development was purely technological. Because he had no soul, he could not cultivate. Unless that person had the ability to control the soul source soul power at will. That's possible, but you have to tell me what you're willing to pay in exchange. Whether it was the Devil Clan, the Insect Clan, or even the current strongest force, the Holy Spirit Clan, they all cultivated the growth system. It was just that they adopted different methods. In Zero's opinion, there was nothing wrong with what he said. As long as Lu Wu was willing to reveal part of his secret, he would be able to confirm that Lu Wu had the ability to fight against him. Then, he would not attack Lu Wu and the Heavenly Demon Army. Looking at the soul power fog, data kept flashing in front of Zero's eyes. The internal database was activated. In his experiments and self-knowledge, Zero finally realized one thing. What he lacked was the least scarce thing in the outer realm, but it was the most important thing: soul origin. Even though the Holy Spirit King rejected him, he never gave up. Just as Lu Wu had said, this was a world of cultivators. However, once Zero's soul casting was completed, he would be unable to escape after leaving a soul imprint in the artifact. Lu Wu was fearless. At first, Lu Wu was confused about the galactic fleet that appeared in the sky and the metallic men that appeared in front of him. He did not know the reason for their visit. The development of technology was too extreme. Although it had the characteristics of rapid development and maximization of battle efficiency, it was also very limited in this world created by cultivators. Of course, this was just Zero's analysis. Lu Wu did not think so. In his rational state, he would only weigh the pros and cons. He wouldn't be dominated by fear, even if his enemies were from the Holy Spirit tribe. Yes, I'm still evolving. I'm still far from the finish line. Even though he was shocked, under his absolute rationality, his emotions did not affect his judgment and thinking at all. Because in the silver eyes, he read the message: the transaction was successful. You can create a soul for me? Zero's voice was calm, but her silver eyes kept flashing. That's right. Not only do I have the confidence to defend against your attack, I even have the confidence to destroy your heaven armament core. Yes, not only can I defend against your attack, but I can also destroy your heavenly armament legion. Do you believe me? When he heard this, Zero's expression was still very calm. The strongest power belonged to cultivators. Without a soul, they did not even have the chance to come into contact with the ultimate rules. They could not even bear the ordinary rules with their pure metal bodies. I guess you haven't found the path to immortality. Am I right? Lu Wu said with a smile. Lu Wu asked curiously, what is it? However, to break through this world, one would need great power. In order to obtain great power, one must have a soul that could bear the power. Although there were many powerhouses who could possess and erase other people's souls, controlling soul power and erasing souls were two completely different concepts. Can you tell me what your secret is? If I believe that your secret can do this, I will choose to leave. Zero's words sounded cowardly, but he said it in a state of absolute rationality. He knew that only with a soul could he have unlimited possibilities. Without a soul, he would be stuck in the same place if he continued to evolve. He would never achieve immortality. Then, the reason why he chose to evolve in the first place would be meaningless. How do you know about me? Why are you looking for me? If I'm not mistaken, the person that the Holy Spirit clan has been looking for recently is you. Hearing this, Zero stopped moving and landed in front of Lu Wu, waiting for him to continue. As for what it was, Zero had sought help from the Holy Spirit King, the strongest and omnipotent being in the outer realm. He was willing to provide a huge amount of resources as a bargaining chip. Lu Wu realized that he was up to no good when he thought about how he led the players to raid the Holy Spirit King's hometown for mechanical energy. Tell me about it, but I won't agree, Lu Wu said nonchalantly. Revenge? Lu Wu asked curiously. You came here just to threaten me? Hearing this, a string of data flashed in front of Zero's eyes. He analyzed Lu Wu's words and came up with a probability, as well as speculations about the unknown situations that might occur. Looking at Lu Wu, who shook his head in rejection, a string of data flashed in front of Zero's eyes again. This time, he did not speak. He levitated and headed toward the main ship. This was no doubt a vicious cycle. This was also the reason why Zero sought out the Holy Spirit King in the first place, hoping to get help. If Lu Wu really had that kind of ability, Zero would naturally be willing to exchange the ultimate law in his hands. However, he did not believe that Zero would dare to attack him here. Although Ike's ability was not as powerful as Zero's, he was still a living being. Although he didn't know where Zero got the information about him, he wasn't afraid at all. Therefore, this ultimate law was only a bargaining chip in his hands. It was of little value to him. Just like what Lu Wu had said before, he would not agree to any conditions. Therefore, Lu Wu was very calm. Even though he couldn't challenge the extreme peak without a soul, he didn't give up. Instead, he relied on scheming and lying low to finally kill a powerhouse who had just succeeded in challenging the extreme peak, seizing the extreme law in his body that hadn't been completely integrated yet. The overlord of the outer realm who used pure technology to build a huge technological empire in the outer realm, the Celestial Machinery Legion, was Zero. Although Zero was shocked to hear Lu Wu say that he could give him a soul after analyzing the data, he believed that the credibility rate was only 5,124%. In fact, Lu Wu had far underestimated Zero's desire for a soul. At his level, he had already discovered the flaws in his path of evolution. He had tried many ways to achieve this, but to no avail. Since he had chosen this path, he would not stop until he achieved immortality. No matter how much you evolve, you will never reach the end. This is because the creator of this firmament world was a cultivator. He did not walk the path of technology. Perhaps you can become very strong by jumping out of this world, but in this world created by deceiving cultivators, the soul is the foundation. You lack the most important thing that all extraterrestrial creatures have. This was because Zero reminded him of Ike, the strongest NPC in the Naraka server. Yes, but I can give you two choices, Zero said with a smile. Soul. Lu Wu laughed after he uttered the word. Yes. Zero did not deny this. Unless he could break through this firmament world, the development of technology would inevitably be bound by all the rules of the extraterrestrial world, and he would not be able to achieve endless growth. The so-called revenge was a very emotional thing. In Zero's eyes, he only had to weigh the pros and cons, seal the heavens. Seeing Zero agree so decisively, Lu Wu was also very surprised. Of course, I have enough to buy information about you, Lu Wu said nonchalantly. He then asked, Zero, how about we discuss a deal? I think I have something that you need. Whatever you want, I can give it to you, Zero said without hesitation. Thinking of this, Zero raised his head and said, What is the meaning of living? There is no end without a soul. This is my choice. Zero gave his answer with a smile. However, the Holy Spirit King rejected him, not even telling him if it was possible. Similarly, if Lu Wu revealed part of his secret information, he could also reduce the losses caused by the war. After confirming that Zero had the ultimate rule, Lu Wu smiled happily. Then, he waved his hand, and a soul power mist appeared in his hand and began to circle around his finger. If Lu Wu could give him a path to immortality, all the benefits would be nothing compared to it. Therefore, Zero did not believe Lu Wu because the probability was too low. This was the Holy Spirit clan's territory. No matter how strong Zero's celestial armament army was, they would not dare to go against the Holy Spirit clan. Not entirely. I'm curious now. Why aren't you afraid at all? Do you still have a trump card? Do you think you can fight me? However, when he heard the Metal Man call him an invader, Lu Wu immediately thought of the origin of the Metal Man in front of him. After many evolutions, he had longed to be able to carry the ultimate rule. However, as he had said just now, this kind of life could not reach the end no matter how much they evolved. To Zero's regret, it was proven that his mechanical body could not carry the ultimate rule, no matter how hard he tried. Do you know who I am? As far as Zero knew, no one in the extraterrestrial world had such power. Hearing what Lu Wu said, a series of data flashed across Zero's eyes. If his secret was exposed, the first person who wanted to kill him would not be Zero, but the Holy Spirit King. That's right. If you want to cast a soul, I can give it to you. However, from now on, you will be on my boat. The Holy Spirit King will also be your enemy. Let's see if you dare. The reason was simple. He had done a lot of research in this area, so he knew how difficult it was to cast a soul. It was almost impossible. You led your people to attack my main base and stole a lot of my resources. Why do you think I'm looking for you? If Lu Wu really had that kind of power, starting a war with him would definitely cause more losses. To Zero, it was not worth it. This was because the main theme of this world was cultivation. Although technology could also become powerful, it could not become the top power. However, even if it was only 0.001%, Zero did not want to miss it. That was why he said this. He wanted to know what Lu Wu wanted. If there was, it could only be the strongest, the Holy Spirit King. Chapter 804. Lu Wu, who was calm at first, couldn't help but widen his eyes when he heard Zero say the word heaven ceiling. Actually, Lu Wu had been pondering a question ever since he entered this dimension. Where did Tu Mia from his original world obtain the ceiling heaven law? Initially, he thought that he had obtained it from challenging the extreme peak. However, it turned out that he had obtained the Tao integration nomological law and not the heaven ceiling law. Subsequently, Lu Wu bought a lot of information related to the ultimate law, but he did not find any information about the heaven ceiling law. Initially, Lu Wu thought that it was because his destiny had changed and that he might never come into contact with the heaven-sealing law again. Little did he expect that the heaven-sealing law would still come to him quietly. Although his destiny had deviated from the fixed path after the last message from Butcher arrived, it was clear that some things hadn't changed. If he really wanted to break free from the samsara this time, he would have to kill the Holy Spirit King of the firmament world. Lu Wu still had a deep impression of the power of the heaven-sealing law, even at this moment. Lil Bei had been sealed for 10,000 years. Even someone as powerful as the Holy Spirit King could not shake him. Such power was enough to show the terrifying might of this extreme Tao law. Although it wasn't ranked among the most powerful extreme laws, it didn't mean that the heaven-sealing law was weaker than the other extreme laws. He could refer to the Spirit King for this. The laws of the sacred spirit he had obtained was not a supreme law either, but the Spirit King had used it to overthrow the demons who had grasped the laws of darkness. Afterwards, he defeated the spatial insects who had also grasped the laws of evolution and led his clansmen to the apex of the food chain in the outer world. An extreme Tao law was equivalent to the sharpest spear, but the power it could display depended on who held it in their hands. Without a doubt, the Spirit King was in existence who had pushed the extreme laws to the limit. This was evident from the fact that he had defeated a race that wielded extreme laws twice. The same principle applied to the heaven-sealing law. Although it was not a supreme law, Lil Bailey had used it to seal the sky for 10,000 years. Even someone as powerful as the Spirit King was unable to break through it. Therefore, when Lu Wu heard the words seal the heavens, his mind started to wander and he thought of many things. After a while, he raised his head and looked at Zero. "I'll help you forge your soul first, then you can give me the heaven-sealing law." Hearing this, a string of data flashed across Ling's eyes. He then asked curiously, "Aren't you afraid that I'll go back on my word after I get the soul I want? Or should I say, you are already prepared that I will never betray you? You should have already guessed that some choices have a price to pay. It's up to you whether you dare to do it or not." As he spoke, Lu Wu reached out and drew a black hole beside him that was connected to the artifact's dimension. Then, he stepped into it. Looking at the black hole, Zero's database started to run again, and he began to analyze the situation. He now had two choices in front of him. In fact, these two choices were already very clear in Zero's eyes. He was the first to step in. Just like what Lu Wu had said, he would become a part of the ship. He would definitely have to fight the Spirit King in the future because Lu Wu possessed what the Spirit King desired the most. The second choice was to leave. At that moment, silver light flashed through Zero's eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. She stepped into the spatial passageway connected to the divine artifact. Just as he had thought before, any other benefits were not worth mentioning compared to having a soul. This was a path filled with hope. He had already explored the end of the other path, and it would be extremely difficult to advance any further. He would soon arrive at an insurmountable cliff and come to a halt. Therefore, he had already made up his mind. As Zero entered, the spatial whirlpool connected to the artifact slowly closed. Lu Wu, who was waiting inside, immediately began the soul-casting surgery. A new special race was conceived and born during the surgery, the first natural disaster of the extraterritorial world. Devil Clan, the second natural disaster of the extraterritorial world. Insect Swarm, and the future name of the third natural disaster of the extraterritorial world would be Intelligence Machine. Of course, this was a story for the future, since Zero's life level was already very high. The soul power required for Lu Wu to cast a soul for him was also very high. At the same time, it would take a long time. During this period, the battle between Hu He, Black Pigeon, and the others in Lingtian world had gradually intensified. After the arrival of the players' reinforcements, the pressure on Little Pigeon's side also increased dramatically. At that moment, in the sky above Heavenly Demonic City, accompanied by a flash of white light, thousands of players appeared. After Little Pigeon sensed the movement, she quickly took out her little golden shovel and levitated into the air. Then, she pointed the golden shovel at Who He and scolded, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Do you really want to die? Little brat, today I will definitely beat your ass until you kneel and beg for mercy," Sun Chi said with a face full of disdain. Hearing this, Little Pigeon knew that today was another day of digging up ancestral graves. Accompanied by his shout, the godly tomb descended. Elders flew out from inside and floated in front of Little Pigeon, forming a defensive barrier. At that moment, the players did not waste any more time and immediately rushed forward with their respective weapons. The familiar chaotic battle began once again. At that moment, Little Pigeon raised her golden shovel and began to choose which elder to dig up in the godly tomb. Up until now, it had dug up 291 elders. Although they were elders, Little Pigeon did not know any of them. Even her father and grandfather did not know the elders that were dug up later on. Moreover, the elders did not know them either. Every time they dug them up, Little Pigeon felt very embarrassed. As for the new elders, they could only rely on the bloodline test to determine if they were their own descendants. Therefore, every time they dug up a follow-up elder, his blood would be drawn. Until now, Little Pigeon felt that he had lost too much blood. Most importantly, it was painful. Moreover, the higher the elder's tomb, the more solid it was. The amount of energy needed to dig up also increased dramatically. Little Pigeon felt that he could not take it anymore. Trembling, Little Pigeon arrived in front of the 292nd elder's tomb. Little Pigeon raised her golden shovel, but she could not bring herself to do it. This was because the tomb looked very solid. It would probably take a few hours to break open. Moreover, the elder would definitely want to draw his blood to verify the purity of his bloodline. These **T procedures gave Little Pigeon a headache. A bunch of old things, however, she had no choice but to dig. With the increase of Hu He's helpers, if she did not increase her combat power, she would not be able to defeat them. Then, she would definitely die. At that moment, Little Pigeon fell into deep thought. She felt that she was under pressure that should not be at her age. It was too difficult. After a while, shouts came from afar, interrupting Little Pigeon's thoughts. "Little brat, hurry up and dig. We can't hold on any longer. Dig, dig, dig. All you know is to let me dig. Why don't you guys come back and dig?" Little Pigeon immediately roared angrily, feeling very sad. The golden shovel only has one master in every generation. Only it can wake us up. You are the heir of the golden shovel of this generation. Why don't you have any idea? Who gave birth to this little brat? Why is he so stupid? One of the elders could not help but roar. When Little Pigeon's father heard this, he shivered and hid in the group of ancestors, not daring to speak. Giving birth to such a son, Little Pigeon's father felt that he had let down his ancestors. Not only was Little Pigeon not respectful to the elders, he even kept saying things like, "Old thing, can you still sleep? Get up and fight." He was undoubtedly an unfilial son. The elders were also bullied by both sides. They were beaten up by the players, and if they lost, they would be scolded by Little Pigeon. They all felt that it was really difficult to be an elder. However, there was no other way. Little Pigeon was their descendant, so they still had to climb out of their coffins to fight. Just as Little Pigeon said, they couldn't bear the pain of having no descendant. In this battle, dozens of players came to support. This time, the ancestors' camp was at a disadvantage again, so they could only ask Little Pigeon to continue digging for ancestors. However, Little Pigeon didn't want to dig anymore. It felt too difficult. It was tiring to dig and dig every day. "I'm still so young, I shouldn't bear so much." Squatting on the ground with her chin in her hand, looking at the elders who were being beaten, the young Little Pigeon's face showed a trace of helplessness. As time went by, the disadvantage of the ancestors' camp became more and more obvious. At this time, Little Pigeon's ancestors couldn't hold on anymore and retreated into the tomb of God's domain. At this time, the players began to besiege the tomb of God's domain, wanting to break it. Inside, the elders surrounded the helpless little pigeon and couldn't help but scold. Little Pigeon nodded, its attitude perfunctory. Yes, 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 you are all ancestors, so you are all right. I'm listening carefully, but I just don't want to dig anymore. The ancestors had a headache because of this. They felt that they weren't the ancestors, but the one in front of them was the little ancestor. Her personality was simply hopeless. As the tomb of God's domain shook violently, an ancestor suddenly said, "Why don't we wake them up? The tombs of the later ancestors are indeed too sturdy. With the little bastard's current ability, it's really difficult to dig them up. Is this really okay?" The other ancestor looked a little embarrassed when he heard this. Look at the situation now. When they break through the tomb of God's domain, the little bastard will be finished. Then, okay, wake them up. The little Chien pigeon looked at the solemn ancestors with a dumbfounded expression. But soon, it understood what the ancestors were talking about. The ancestors began to work together to reverse the internal domain of the tomb of God's domain. The internal world began to rotate, the old tombs sank, and a new graveyard appeared. Seeing this, Little Pigeon's eyes widened. Hey, ancestor, where are your tombs? What are these tombs? Hearing this, Little Pigeon's father pointed at the first tomb with a serious face and said, "This is the second floor of the tomb of God's God. This is your mother, next to her is your grandmother, and the one next to her is your great-grandmother." Little Pigeon was caught off guard by the sudden increase in the foundation of the ancestors. Little bastard, dig! Okay. At this moment, Little Pigeon suddenly had a little expectation. Then, it spat on its left and right hands, raised the golden shovel to its mother's tomb, and began to dig. "Mom, although I haven't seen you before, your son is being bullied now. Get up quickly." A moment later, it came to the tomb on the side. "Grandma, you old fart, your grandson is being bullied. How can you still sleep? Great-grandma, you're still sleeping at this time. Touch your conscience and tell me, can you bear to see me being bullied? Hey, what are you sleeping for? Get up and have fun." Looking at Little Pigeon, who didn't know what to do, the ancestors covered their faces together. They felt that Little Pigeon was the most embarrassing descendant they had ever seen. If they hadn't tested its bloodline, they would have thought that it was picked up from some ravine to make up the numbers. Then, while the players were dumbfounded, the combat power of the ancestors' camp where Little Pigeon was located soared. Chapter 805. After bombarding the tomb of the god's graveyard, the players' expressions gradually turned ferocious. From the looks of it, it seemed like they had given up on resisting. The players had been unhappy with the scolding Little Pigeon for a long time. They felt that they could finally take revenge now. However, just when the players thought that they would soon be able to help he complete the mission, the tomb of the god's graveyard suddenly reversed and new tombs appeared. Under the shocked gazes of the players, crystal coffins were violently dug out by the Little Pigeon. Inside each coffin was a beautiful woman dressed in gorgeous clothes. At this moment they were slowly waking up. After digging out nearly 100 great-grandmothers, the Little Pigeon wiped the sweat off its forehead. It suddenly turned its head and realized that the great-grandmothers were staring at it, giving it a shock. "Great-grandmothers, what are you waiting for? Let's go out and fight." "Little brat of the Chien family of this generation, what's your name?" At this moment, a beautiful woman dressed in blue clothes decorated with starlight gems looked at the Little Pigeon and asked, "Little Pigeon." The Little Pigeon immediately answered, but its face was full of disdain. It seemed to be unhappy that the great-grandmothers were not going out to fight. "Little brat, are you willing to follow me back to heavenly serenity and inherit the inheritance of heavenly serenity?" asked the beautiful woman with a smile as she looked at the Little Pigeon. "Little Pigeon, don't listen to her. You should follow me back to the forest of nature and inherit the millions of soldiers of the forest of nature. The best choice is to be a nature god who is the companion of nature." At this moment, a woman in green clothes stepped forward and refuted the woman in blue clothes. "What forest of nature? It's just a remote place. Follow me back to heavenly abyss and inherit the inheritance of the Devil Lord. Wouldn't it be great to become the overlord of the Outland in the future? All of you, shut up. I think the little pigeon is the most suitable for the immortal capital. I believe he will be willing to go back with me." Looking at the quarreling great-grandmothers, the little pigeon was dumbfounded. Then, it turned its head to look at the ancestors, only to realize that they were all embarrassed. The little pigeon was speechless. At this moment, the little pigeon suddenly felt that its bloodline seemed to have a lot of secrets. In fact, it was just as Xian Gu had thought. His luck was so exuberant that it wasn't something that could be easily obtained. Every single ancestor of the Xian family was the strongest in the world. They were the only true gods in the world who could shatter the void and leave. Therefore, ordinary women were naturally not within their consideration. After reaching the god realm, every old ancestor would go to the outer realm to wander around, and their lifelong partners were also acquainted during this period. If that was all there was to it, then it wouldn't be a big deal. What was terrifying was that the partners of every generation of the Xian family's patriarchs were the leaders of the strongest forces in the outer realm. For example, the saintess of the remote sky palace, the goddess of the forest of nature, the demon master of the heavenly abyss world, and so on in terms of the combat strength of the black pigeon ancestors' bloodline. If the ancestors were to be compared with the great-grandmothers camp was clearly superior. Although each of Xian Ji's great-grandmothers had married a descendant of the Xian family, they all had an obsession in their hearts. They hoped that the next generation would go back and inherit the legacy of their own forces. Therefore, they disliked each other and often fought with each other. In Xian Ji's generation, all of the great-grandmother's armies added up to at least 50 billion. What kind of concept was this? This kind of combat strength could completely dominate a part of the outer realm like the Iron Blood race. In fact, they might even be slightly stronger than the Iron Blood race. The Xian family's foundation could no longer be described as rich, but even little Xian Gu didn't know about this. This was because every generation of old ancestor had their own hidden troubles. Now that the great-grandmothers had appeared again, the conflict between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law exploded once again. Seeing this scene, the ancestors of the Xian pigeon trembled, and their expressions were very awkward. Xian Gu, on the other hand, had a dumbfounded look on her face. She thought to herself, "Why are these old fogies quarreling?" However, the next development of the situation gradually became more serious. Soon, the quarrel between the great-grandmothers turned into a battle of martial strength. They began to use spells to smash each other, and the internal strife began. Seeing the internal strife in the realm of the god's graveyard, the players who were still smashing the barrier of the realm of the god's graveyard were confused. They didn't understand what was happening inside the realm of the god's graveyard and why they started fighting. However, the players soon didn't take it seriously, because no matter what happened inside, they had to smash open the realm of the god's graveyard and beat up Xian Gu. This was what they needed to do. But soon, the players couldn't smash anymore as little Xian Ji's great-grandmothers fought. They broke out of the realm of the god's graveyard and started fighting outside. At this time, one of the great-grandmothers couldn't take it anymore and took out a token. "Heavenly Abyss Demon Army, listen to my command." Along with this great-grandmother's angry shout, the token instantly turned into a circle of black holes after floating in the air. Then, countless soldiers in black armor surged out from inside. Nature elves descend. At this time, an aquamarine leaf rose into the sky and also turned into a circle of black holes. Lucien 18 armies, kill the enemies with me. Bone gods, follow my guidance and come here. As circles of black holes appeared in the sky, armies and creatures of different colors surged out from inside and began to gather outside. Seeing this, the players' hands that were smashing the barrier of the realm of the gods' graveyard suddenly became weak, and their ferocious expressions gradually became kind. Because they realized that something big had happened, and the situation didn't seem right. Kill! Kill! At this time, a great-grandmother took the lead and shouted an attack cry. While the players were horrified, the countless armies that suddenly descended collided with each other, and the battle between the great-grandmothers began. At this moment, the world changed, and the void shattered. The horrifying aura emitted from the confrontation between the armies shocked the players. The plot was jumping around, and it didn't follow the usual pattern at all. The players' brain circuits obviously couldn't keep up with it. As the confrontation between the great-grandmothers became more and more intense, the residual energy kept hitting the players, making them feel very uncomfortable. At this moment, the players began to smash the realm of the gods' graveyard again. Hurry up and open the door. Let's stop fighting for now and go in to hide. Open the door for me. Let us in. Don't smash, I'll let you come in and hide. At this time, an ancestor of the little pigeon waved his hand and created a crack in the domain barrier of the tomb of God. The players who were battered by the shockwave of energy immediately swarmed in through the cracks in the barrier. After all the players entered, the crack in the barrier disappeared. At that moment, the Xian family's ancestor who opened the crack said, "How about we reconcile for now?" Reconciliation, we must reconcile. Lu Chai wiped his sweat as he looked at the horrifying scene outside. The two forces that had already fought several times stopped fighting at this moment. They raised their heads and began to watch the super chaotic battle that was taking place outside. At the end of the battle between the great grannies, the space was completely distorted and turned into darkness, leaving the players dumbfounded. At this moment, the players and the ancestors of the Xian family were shivering in fear. They hugged each other to keep warm inside the god's mausoleum. The little pigeon was also shocked. It looked outside and couldn't calm down for a long time. Great-grandmother's evil power was so terrifying. Chapter 806. Before the great-grandmothers were born, the little pigeon had always thought that the Xian family relied on their ancestors to conquer the world. After all, every generation was the most powerful and invincible in the world. Only now did the little pigeon understand that compared to the great-grandmothers, the ancestors were just living off women. Looking at the chaotic battle outside, the little pigeon was amazed. The great-grandmothers who were born were just a part of it. However, its power had already far surpassed that of the old ancestors present. Because one great-grandmother was equivalent to an extraterrestrial army. Such a strong family gave the little pigeon a lot of pressure, especially when the great-grandmothers said that they were going to inherit something. "I'm just a 3-year-old child, I shouldn't bear such a huge pressure." In the little pigeon's original dream, the path it should take was to transform into an evil force and learn from the ancestors to conquer this world. Then, it would go to the extraterrestrial and continue to abuse its power. That would be a carefree life. Being trapped in a world, inheriting something was not a happy thing in the little pigeon's eyes. So now it regretted releasing the great-grandmothers. It seemed that there was no way to clean up the mess. Look at how fierce these old women are, they fight without saying a word. If I don't agree, I'll definitely be beaten up. Thinking of this, the little pigeon looked at the shivering ancestors. It felt that the ancestors could not be relied on anymore. In the eyes of the little pigeon, the dignified ancestors were just weak chickens that lived off women. So the little pigeon turned its gaze to Hu He and the others. It quietly walked to Hu He's side, pulled Hu He's sleeve, looked up and said, "Are you from the extraterrestrial realm?" Hearing this, Hu He lowered his head and looked at the little pigeon. He was puzzled. "Yes, what's wrong? How about we stop fighting? What benefits did they give you? I'll give you 10 times more. How about you take me to the extraterrestrial realm?" "Hu He, little brat, what are you thinking? Do you know how valuable you are? I advise you to lie down and wait for your death. Go-Zi stood up and patted the pigeon's shoulder as he spoke in a serious tone. The dog, who was about the same height as the little pigeon, felt an inexplicable sense of joy when he stood next to the little pigeon. Silly dog, don't touch me! The little pigeon glared at the dog and took a step back. When he heard that, Go-Zi's eyes widened. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to teach the little pigeon a lesson. Upon seeing this, Lu Chai quickly stepped forward to stop the fight. Since he had agreed to temporarily stop, he naturally couldn't go back on his word. The little Xian pigeon also spat 2 mouthfuls of saliva on its left and right hands, putting on a stance of, "I'm going to fight you to the death." Seeing this, the ancestors immediately stepped forward to stop the little pigeon to prevent the conflict from escalating. Up until now, the elder ancestors had discovered one thing: he and the others were not creatures of this world at all. This was because there had never been such a powerful humanoid creature in this world. They were all invincible in this world, so how could they not know this? Therefore, at this moment they were very puzzled. What was the reason for he and the rest to come all the way from the outer realm to kill the little pigeon? In fact, the ancestors had already thought of this when they first started the war, but they didn't take it seriously at that time. They just wanted to kill the invaders. But as the battle escalated, the old ancestors realized the problem. The old ancestors' tomb was extremely hard and the seal was extremely strong. With the little pigeon's ability, it was obviously not enough to dig further. However, the number of invaders was still increasing. If this went on, they would definitely not be able to hold on any longer. This was also the reason why they forced the little pigeon to dig out the great-grandmother army. However, even though they had the advantage at this moment, the elder ancestors had to consider the little pigeon's future. What if there was an even greater force behind this force? Therefore, the elder ancestors had a new idea. If they could resolve this peacefully, they really didn't want to continue fighting with he and the others. Thinking of this, one of the elder ancestors looked at he and said, "Can we reconcile?" After hearing this, he was stunned. Then, a trace of hesitation appeared on his face. In fact, when he decided to collect special soul powers and start the equivalent trade, he already understood that there was no distinction between good and evil on this path. Good people could make wishes, and so could evil people. The only criterion to measure it was the value of the special soul. As traders, they would always walk the line between good and evil. It never mattered who was right or wrong. As long as they gave enough rewards, they would help one side to suppress the other. The difficulty of this wish mission obviously exceeded he's expectations. 300 special soul powers seemed to be a lot, but it was only the price to kill the little pigeon that was protected by luck. If the super force behind the little pigeon was included, 30,000 special soul powers might not even be enough. After all, the Xian family had a strong foundation. Moreover, according to the dog officials, he might not even be able to defeat their first elder ancestor. There was no chance to assassinate him now, because the little pigeon had already made sufficient preparations. Therefore, it was no longer worth it to kill the little pigeon for 300 special soul powers. If they were to fight this battle, it would probably take a very long time. As players, although they weren't afraid of death, what they lacked was time. 10,000 years had passed, almost 3,000 years had passed. They only had 7,000 years left to develop. 7,000 years seemed like a long time, but in a huge battlefield like the extraterritorial galaxy, it was just a snap of the fingers. Many super experts might even spend tens of thousands of years sleeping. And the Holy Spirit King spent an era to forge the unification of paths rule. Therefore, 7,000 years was really a short time. It was obviously not a wise choice to waste time here. At this moment, he was a little tempted by the suggestion of the little pigeon's elder ancestor. He felt that it was actually not a bad idea to take the opportunity to extort some money to make up for the loss. Thinking of this, he looked at Lu Chai. As one of the decision-makers among the players, who he still decided to see what Boss Lu thought. Seeing that who he was looking at him, Lu Chai nodded. Obviously, he had the same idea as who he. At this moment, who he had a decision in his mind. He looked at the elder ancestor of the little pigeon and said, "We can reconcile, but we came all the way here. You have to give us something, right?" The elder ancestor naturally knew what who he was talking about. After all, they had no enmity with each other. Since they came all the way from the extraterritorial galaxy, it was nothing more than profit. Therefore, if they wanted to resolve the dispute, it was reasonable for them to give some benefit. Thinking of this, the elder ancestor of the little pigeon nodded. He waved his hand and took out several rule strings from his personal space. He pushed them forward and pushed them to Hu He. "There are 5 rule strings here, all from the great world. They are very valuable. Is this enough?" "Not enough." Lu Chai spoke first before Hu He could speak. 5 rule strings from the great world, according to the price in the glittering jewel world, were worth more than 10 million soul coins. However, the value of the special 300 soul points was more than 100 million ordinary soul coins. After all, the players' wish rewards were basically single-digit special soul coins. 300 soul coins was already a huge amount. Although they could make some concessions, they would never make a deal that was too disadvantageous to them. Hearing Hu He's rejection, the elder ancestor could not help but be stunned. He frowned and said, "Aren't you being too greedy? Continue to bid. We only care about the reward. We refuse to bargain." From Lu Chai's point of view, they were not good people, but extraterritorial demons. They were bargaining like they were buying vegetables in the market. Faced with Lu Chai's tough attitude, the elder ancestor blew his beard and glared at him. After a moment of stalemate, he sighed. He waved his hand and took out a coin-like item. He pushed it to Lu Chai and whispered, "The forest of nature's heirloom shell. This should be enough, right?" Seeing the elder ancestor's secretive behavior, Lu Chai was stunned. He subconsciously glanced at the chaotic battle outside and suddenly realized whose coin this belonged to. It was probably his wife's heirloom, however. Lu Chai still opened the analysis menu and looked at it. Nature's Spring, Origin Energy. Item Introduction, contains a large amount of nature essence. Long-term wear can greatly increase the user's ability to understand nature spells and the rules. It was formed by the Holy Spirit power when the nature world was first formed. Seeing this coin, the dog's eyes were fixed on it. Although he was only here to help, he felt that this coin was simply tailor-made for him. A weapon forged by Holy Spirit force was on the same level as the golden shovel in the little pigeon's hand. If this thing was in his hands, the power of his nature spells would definitely increase greatly, and it would also allow his understanding of the law of nature to reach a higher level. In conclusion, if he had this coin, he would be able to heal a lot more. Therefore, it was impossible for him not to desire it. "Great Demon King, I owe you 300 soul coins. How about you give this to me?" Sun Chi asked with a serious face. Although he did not have any special soul power in his body, he still wanted to fight for it. Maybe after completing the wish mission of killing that stinking idiot with one sword slash, the subsequent wish missions would be very simple and he might be able to collect 300 special soul power in no time. Hu He nodded and waved his hand to push the coin to Sun Chi. Then, he looked at the elder ancestor of Black Pigeon and said, "Deal." Hearing Hu He's agreement, a smile appeared on the elder ancestor's tense face. Then, he looked at Sun Chi and said, "Put it away quickly. This was given to me by my mother. She said that she wanted me to inherit the forest of nature's inheritance. I didn't go and she still hasn't settled the score with me. If she finds out that I gave this away, I might die." Hearing this, Go Zi and the others were stunned. The elder ancestor of Black Pigeon reminded them of a joke from the era of the Three Realms. If they didn't do well, they would have to go back and inherit the family's wealth. It seemed that every generation of the elder ancestor of the Xian family had taken this wayward path. Each of them was a rich second generation, but none of them wanted to inherit the family's wealth. Instead, they all liked to wander outside the realm. Since they had reached an agreement, the players did not stay in this world any longer. One by one, they walked out of the tomb of God's mausoleum. Against the violent space countercurrent in the outside world, they tore through the space and left. He also made a post in the forum, expressing his gratitude to the players who came to support him. He also said that he would be there if his brothers were in trouble in the future. After doing all this, he did not leave. Instead, he entered the tomb of God's mausoleum again. He looked at the little black pigeon holding the golden shovel and said, "Little black pigeon, do you want to learn how to refine corpses, dig graves, and break seals from me?" Hearing this, the little black pigeon raised its head in confusion. Obviously, it did not understand what he meant. Seeing this, he waved his hand and took out a purple gold shovel. He pointed at the graves of his ancestors and said, "In my eyes there is no tomb or seal that cannot be broken, no matter how strong it is." As he spoke, he was brimming with confidence. At this moment, the little black pigeon suddenly felt that who was carrying the coffin on his back, was emitting a golden light. Chapter 807. There was a reason why the ancestral graves of the Xian family were harder to dig up. In the beginning, when the descendants of the Xian family encountered an unsolvable problem, they would summon the tomb of the god of sin and dig up the strongest ancestor. Over time, the strongest ancestor became impatient and set up a strong seal on his own grave so that he could sleep peacefully. However, the descendants of the Xian family did not stop and began to dig up the second strongest ancestor. As for the graves of their fathers, the descendants of the Xian family did not even want to touch them. After all, they could just dig up the strongest ancestor to solve the problem. There was no need to beat around the bush. After this situation lasted for a long time, the ancestors of the Xian family learned to be smart. They set up a seal on their own graves so that the problems that could be solved by their descendants did not need to be solved by themselves. The tomb of the god of sin domain was very strong, so there was enough time for their descendants to dig up. When it came to Little Pigeon's generation, although he could dig up graves with the strength of the Ghost Emperor, it became more and more difficult as time went on. He did not have the strength to dig up the subsequent graves. Otherwise, with Little Pigeon's character, he would definitely dig up the strongest ancestor. Why would he choose to discuss anything with the players? However, with Little Pigeon's ability, this was obviously unrealistic. Hence, he always had a dream in his heart, which was to dig up the strongest ancestor one day. He knew that the prerequisite for this was that he had to be strong enough. Because the Xian family completely relied on the golden shovel in their hands to break the seal, it was a purely violent method. At this moment, hearing he swear that there was no seal that he could not break, Little Pigeon's eyes lit up. Without questioning or asking for proof, Little Pigeon pulled on his sleeve and acted like a spoiled child, asking to be his disciple. From then on, he had a little kid who could not grow up. Although he was often beaten by he never left his side and was always at his beck and call. In the future, the mysterious king, who carried the tomb of the god of sin domain and dominated the extraterrestrial world, was born by chance. The trajectory of his fate changed drastically after he came into contact with He would also be one of the legends left by the heavenly devil army that would suddenly disappear from the extraterrestrial world in the future. As time passed, 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, the players were still working hard to collect the special soul power. Many things happened during this period of time. While the players' mental states were tempered, they also obtained a large amount of special soul power. Although the players hadn't gone out of their way to collect resources, their overall strength had improved rapidly, especially with the support of their special soul power. This was the power of the law of darkness. Not only could it significantly increase a player's cultivation speed, but it could also grant many godly realm players the power to contend against ancient gods for a short time. Some players might even be able to kill ancient gods. The more the players came into contact with the dark loss rules that allowed the demon race to reach the top of the food chain in the other lands, the more they came into contact with it, the more they were shocked by its effect. The only downside was that it consumed a lot of cigarettes. While Lu Wu was studying the lost rule, he was also paying attention to the players' every move. At the same time, he would appear in the forum from time to interact with the players. At this moment, Lu Wu, who was in the artifact space, was using the artifact to search the worlds that the players were currently in to check on their situation. Just then, Lu Wu received a message from Zero. The Heaven's Sealing Law has been retrieved. Coordinates, XXX. A smile appeared on Lu Wu's face when he saw the message from Zero. He was ready to depart immediately. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt an incomparably powerful force connecting with the artifact. Lu Wu's expression became very solemn. He immediately turned his gaze to the world where the force was coming from. The Starry Dimension world. This was a world that was different from the three realms, which was divided by spiritual energy. It was a special domain world similar to the Abyss world, independent of the other lands. At this moment, in the southern region of this world, in a forest full of silver-white fir trees, a man was panting with a nervous look on his face. The Sky Devil cloak, which was exclusive to players, was fluttering behind him. Sweat flowed down his cheeks. He realized that his body was slowly melting and softening. His name was Mu Yi, and he was an inconspicuous member of the players. Before becoming a player, Mu Yi was a super otaku. His favorite passions were anime, figurines, games, and other 2D content. In the past, Mu Yi thought that this was the end of his life. However, after coming into contact with battle, Mu Yi discovered his talent. He became a professional player who was respected by the guild members. He was very happy with these days, and he was very grateful for the fun that the game battle brought to him. However, battle was ultimately a game, and he was still immersed in the 2D world. However, after the human world's catastrophe, Mu Yi realized that everything was real. They were not playing a game, but experiencing every process of the underworld. After the human world's catastrophe and rebirth, Mu Yi was also depressed. During that period of time, the dog officials disappeared without a trace. All the players lost faith in the future, including him. However, on the day that the dog officials returned, he realized that deep in his heart, he had not given up. He was just waiting. In the end, he bid farewell to his family and followed the dog officials on a journey to the other lands without hesitation. Since those who followed the dog officials were all professional players, he became an inconspicuous member of the player community. However, Mu Yi also wanted to become stronger. He did not want to give up on any opportunities, and he wanted to contribute to the community of players. Although his talent was incomparable to those cheaters, he did not give up because he clearly remembered something that the dog officials once said. "Maybe you don't believe me, but back then, I was more useless than any of you. I had nothing but her, and I knew nothing." Although they always called him the dog officials, Mu Yi knew that they would not lie to them. This could be seen from the various concessions made by the dog officials when it came to the distribution of soul coins in the beginning of battle. The construction, activities, and growth in the game were all arranged by the dog officials with the soul coins. The dog officials had been cultivating them behind the scenes, not using them as tools to earn soul coins. All the players understood this, and Mu Yi was no exception. Therefore, he believed in what the lousy officials said and tried to work hard in the direction of becoming stronger. Since he was not talented enough, he would make up for it with opportunities and hard work. Up until now, he had already completed more than 50 wish missions, and had accumulated 300 special soul coins. And this time, He didn't come to the starry dimension world because he received a wish quest. Instead, when he was looking through the wish quest list, he found a wish quest from before the current era. The reward was 10,000 special soul points. In truth, Mu Yi didn't have much hope for this mission. After all, it was a wish made by Ji Kuang, and it had been 100 million years. Perhaps the creature who made the wish was long dead, and its soul had long since reincarnated or vanished. However, he wanted to become stronger, so he decided to spend some soul power to cross into this world. Perhaps there would be a pleasant surprise. However, the existence of this starry dimension world was very strange. It disappeared and reappeared from time to time. It took him 13 years to enter this world by chance. However, after entering this world, Mu Yi felt that something was wrong. There was not a trace of the power of laws in this world, but he sensed an even more powerful force. Unlike the Great Path laws, this force was more similar to the extreme laws described by the dog officials. While this force enveloped this world, it also suppressed the operation of the power of laws within it. Even the power of laws within his body was suppressed by this terrifying force, and he could not use it at all. Usually, when they traveled the outer realms, they would often enter worlds where their laws could not normally absorb spiritual energy. However, with the spiritual energy stored in their bodies, they could still use spells to fight. Here, however, all the power of laws was suppressed, and he could not even use the power in his body. Hence, he could only move around with his physical strength. It was Mu Ye's first time coming into contact with such a strange world, so he could not help but feel nervous. During his exploration, he discovered that there were many species in this world. However, according to the analysis of the artifact, these creatures were collectively known as fantasy breeds. Their strength ranged from ghost kings to ancient gods, and Mu Yi had yet to see the stronger ones. But to Mu Ye's surprise, he discovered that he couldn't kill a single creature in this place. All the fantasy breeds that were killed would be resurrected in a short period of time without any consumption, nor would they generate any soul power. Such creatures shocked Mu Yi because they were even more heaven-defying than the digitized resurrection of the artifact. Mu Yi began to investigate and tried to interact with the fantasy breeds in this world, hoping to understand why this world was so strange. However, what left Mu Yi dumbfounded was that even the artifact could not translate the language of the fantasy breeds in this world. It was also Mu Ye's first time encountering such a situation. It seemed like the artifact's ability was restricted in this world. Fortunately, he could still open the forum, which meant that he was still connected to the artifact and did not have to worry about dying here. For the next month, Mu Yi traveled around this world, searching for the reason. And at this moment, he finally understood the reason why this world was so strange. There was a huge pit in the dense forest in the southern region of this world, and there was a purple horn in it. Even the artifact could not read any information about this horn. When Mu Yi approached it, he discovered that his body was slowly melting, and he could not leave even if he wanted to tear through space. He was extremely nervous and tried to seek help from the damned officials, but he realized that he could not even bring up his friend list. The purple radiance emitted by the horn slowly enveloped him, and his body gradually melted and shrank, finally turning into a white creature that looked like a slime. The god-level strength that he had was instantly stripped away, and he became the most ordinary creature that was not even at the ghost's supreme realm. In an instant, countless information appeared in Mu Ye's mind, and a voice sounded at the same time. True strength depends on imagination. Everything that is imaginable can be turned into my power. As the voice sounded, Mu Yi understood the reason for the formation of this world. After opening the artifact, he discovered that he had actually become a fantasy breed creature. As for the purple horn, Mu Yi now knew its name. Ultimate law of extreme Tao, illusion. At this moment, Mu Yi knew why the artifact's power was suppressed here. It was because the purple horn was an ultimate law of the same level as the artifact. Unless the damned officials came with the unification of Pav's law, he would not be able to break free from the restraints of the illusion power. Moreover, he also realized that the God-level power in his body did not disappear temporarily. Instead, it was truly stripped away when his body turned into a slime creature. Mu Yi was very confused about how to get out of this predicament. At this moment, a scene appeared in his mind. The background of the scene was in outer space, and two people were looking at each other across many star regions. One of them had countless pulsating black holes behind him. He stood there like a god, and his indifferent eyes were completely emotionless. His gaze seemed to be able to see through everything. With just a glance, Mu Yi felt like all his secrets had been revealed. The other person was extremely ordinary. He always had a smile on his face, and he seemed very ordinary. However, there were countless bubbles floating behind him, and each bubble had a scene playing out. Tianhe, give me the illusion, and I'll spare your life. Spirit King, the fiends are hunting you down, yet you still have the time to think about me? Aren't you afraid that I'll work with those lunatics from the fiends? The man called Tianhe chuckled when he heard that. Give it to me or die. I'll give you a choice. The Spirit King did not say anything, but his voice rang out in Tianhe's ears. Tianhe's expression gradually turned cold when he heard the Spirit King's merciless words. This was a scene from several eras ago. It was the story of the strongest person in outer space, the Spirit King, overturning the fiends and ascending to the top of the food chain. Back then, the Spirit King did not have any ultimate law. He only had the Spirit King law. However, against Tianhe, who had grasped the ultimate law, the Spirit King had an absolute advantage in terms of presence. His strength came from his innate talent, as well as his absolute confidence in himself. Chapter 808. Only he could. However, the Spirit King was different. He constantly moved through the space, predicting the trajectory of the black specks of light and dodging them with great ease. Whether it was an illusory figure or a real existence, as long as it was within his imagination, it could all be his power. However, in the Spirit King's eyes, Tianhe was just enraged due to his powerlessness. Space shattered as Tianhe moved. He was like an unstoppable tiger as he charged viciously at the Spirit King. Countless black specks of light darted back and forth in the center of the dark storm. Tianhe immediately became covered in wounds. The power of demons suddenly filled his surroundings. It was the greatest power of his body and the greatest source of his technique. A figure appeared in his head, which then turned into a colossal space giant. With a wave of his hand, he shattered the stars along the way. The tremendous power locked onto the Spirit King immediately and swept over. Afterwards, he vanished from where he was with a flash, as if he was extremely afraid of being contaminated by the power of illusion. Ha ha! Can you control the power of demons? A sliver of excitement finally appeared on the Spirit King's face. There were members of the Spirit King's sacred spirits, fiends' children, spatial insectoids, and so on. They were obviously no ordinary disasters, since they were known as external disasters. They could easily destroy an entire region of stars, reducing everything they passed by to nothingness. This was a forbidden ground for all creatures, but it was only his playground. Even though he was weak, as long as he could imagine the form of a space giant in his head, he could possess all the abilities of this race. This was because the power had become extremely uncontrollable. It had completely broken free from the laws of illusion. At that moment, Tianhe felt that he was extremely powerful. This power did not belong to the Spirit King, but the power of natural disasters in outer space. However, after passing through the black hole, he was greeted by another natural disaster in outer space. He did not fear an opponent like that, no matter how powerful they were. The Spirit King extended his hand at this moment, and saintly spiritual force immediately surged out. It wrapped around Tianhe's body and forcefully pulled him into a black hole. They were both omniscient and omnipotent, but the Spirit King's control over this was clearly greater than Tianhe's. This was because Tianhe was not a true demon. Although the power of illusion was very strong, Tianhe was unable to use this power to its fullest. As a result, even the Spirit King did not dare to set foot in the forbidden grounds. He only hoped that his clansmen could bring back an incomplete horn for him so that he could reconstruct the supreme illusion. Mu Yi. However, the moment he retreated, a black hole suddenly appeared behind him, and he instantly fell into it. As for an opponent like Tianhe, he was too weak for him. The only way to escape from this place was to break free from the control of the fantasy power and obtain the shattered fantasy horn. Transcending this firmament world and being above everything else was what he pursued. Here, talents and abilities of any race were equivalent to nothing. Only fantasy was power. This time, he transformed into a black, round, spherical creature. Under such circumstances, Tianhe did not panic. His figure suddenly changed. Chaos Beast? Interesting. The Spirit King's expression finally changed slightly when he saw this. He even had a straw hat on his head. He had thought that he could fight the Spirit King with his own strength, but he did not expect that he could not even touch the Spirit King's body. He was completely being played by the Spirit King. Looking at the incomplete horn not far away, Mu Yi suddenly had an idea. Any race in the outer realm could be simulated by the law of illusion. Even the virtual figures in his mind could become a part of his own power. The scene ended at this moment, and Mu Yi suddenly came to his senses. The Spirit King had always maintained a certain distance from him, not giving him a chance to catch up. The Spirit King's only target was the demon clan. He wanted to be the new ruler and dictator of the firmament world, not an animal exploited by the demon clan. This area could be called the Forbidden Grounds of the Forbidden Ground. It was one of the most terrifying natural disasters in the outer realm. In the midst of the chase, Tianhe gradually realized that something was wrong. Facing Tianhe's sudden increase in strength, the Spirit King was still very calm. His omniscience and omnipotence gave him the confidence to fight any enemy. He knew that the Spirit King was very powerful, and he also knew that the Spirit King was collecting extreme laws everywhere in order to overthrow the demon clan. As a result, he did not want to provoke the Spirit King, nor did he want to participate in the war between the Spirit King and the demon clan. However, he was currently being controlled by the Spirit King because he was omniscient. Knowing that he could not escape death, Tianhe gave up on the last struggle in his heart. A purple horn appeared on his forehead, and his body suddenly collapsed. In the next few hundred years, countless challengers risked their lives to enter this world. In the years that followed, a large group of creatures gradually appeared in this originally lifeless area. They were collectively known as Fantasy Breed. They had all come for the law of illusion. Everything that fantasy touches can be turned into my power. This was what Tianhe had said before he died, but it was also the truth of the law of illusion. Take fantasy away. Don't let the Spirit King succeed. I'll use the last of my soul as a trade. Tianhe was currently completely under the Spirit King's control. Regardless of whether he advanced or retreated, he would fall into a new spatial black hole with every step. He would be tossed around in the natural disasters of the outer realm. Afterwards, the evolution was extremely fast, and a new world was rapidly formed. The power of the cosmic giants descended, but the Spirit King did not budge at all. He extended a finger, and the black hole behind him immediately pushed forward, tearing the invisible power to pieces. When he reappeared, he was already in another natural disaster. Haha, I want this more and more. Sure enough, everything can be simulated. Let's try this. Tianhe, who had been completely angered, was like a raging bull. He used his powerful body as a demon to forcefully push through the natural disasters and advance. Even though he had obtained the same power as the Spirit King through fantasy, he clearly could not match up to the Spirit King in terms of how he used it. Tianhe knew that he would become even worse if this continued, so he roared furiously at the sky. As he struggled, Tianhe's power became weaker and weaker. At this moment, his expression changed. Everything that fantasy touches can be turned into my power? Tianhe stared viciously at the figure that hovered nearby, but he could not touch it at all. His heart was filled with fury and sorrow. At this moment, the power of fantasy suddenly gathered around him. Mu Yi, who was originally in his slime form, was shocked to find that he had become the figure of fantasy in his mind. However, he did not think that he would die less than 8,000 years after obtaining this supreme power. As the black holes expanded, the natural disasters suddenly increased. Then, a figure appeared in his mind. This was a character that he liked very much in an anime. His body distorted at this moment, and when he opened his eyes, he had taken the appearance of the Spirit King. Mu Yi was suddenly filled with excitement. In this world, they had all been infected by the power of fantasy and turned into fantasy breeds. Their original power had been completely stripped away. Even though he had the body of a chaotic beast, Tianhe could not withstand such a harsh environment very quickly. However, after entering this domain, all of them were infected by the power of fantasy and turned into fantasy breed. They even lost their original ability to think and became muddle-headed, relying on their instincts to devour each other. This was also the reason why he longed for this ultimate Tao law. Even though he had completely replicated his ability, the Spirit King was still very confident in himself. A pair of goat horns engraved with inscriptions grew from his forehead, and then a pair of pitch-black wings pierced through his back. His pupils suddenly burned with dark green flames, and dark red patterns spread all over his body. Mu Yi tried to stretch his body, and to his surprise, he really did have the ability of the rubber fruit. His body could be stretched and extended at will. He waved his hand and tore the space in front of him apart. A great power suddenly erupted, and everything around him suddenly stopped. This was because this body represented the top of the food chain in the outer realm, the demon race. However, at this moment, it appeared in Mu Ye's mind, playing quickly like a movie. He only needed 0.00001 seconds to understand where an extraterrestrial disaster would appear in the outer realm. He could then use the black hole to connect with it and guide the natural disaster's power to fight the enemy. Spirit King, do you want it? Come and get it yourself. The two figures appeared again. They were already inside a natural disaster, and it was the most terrifying central area. He opened his mouth and sucked hard. In an instant, all the natural disaster's power was sucked into his mouth, and it was quickly refined in his stomach. At this moment, he was filled with sorrow. He could not help but roar, omniscience and fantasy. He could become a god of creation. To others, the natural disasters were extremely terrifying, but to the omniscient and omnipotent Spirit King, they were nothing. At this moment, the Spirit King's power enveloped the heavenly river again. Before he could react, it pulled him into another natural disaster. In the face of this power, even the most terrifying natural disasters from the outer realms could not shake it in the slightest. He had already practiced this game of chess in his head. The heavenly river was very powerful, but in the Spirit King's eyes, it was just a piece of trash with a mortal's heart who wielded great power. As the Spirit King smiled, he entered the black hole as well. Experience this journey well. Tell me if you don't want to die. The natural disasters were converted into power as the Spirit King controlled the black hole. They helped him fend off the power of the astral giant and quickly swept towards the heavenly river. The heavenly river's incomplete soul drifted into this world. He used the last of his power to draw an altar there and made a final wish to the demon race. As long as he could imagine it, it could all be converted into his own power. Extreme darkness storms, spatial collapses, death thunderstorms, and so on. He advanced step by step. using his omniscience and omnipotence to accurately calculate the direction of the heavenly river's retreat. He set up a spatial trap beforehand. Even though he had conjured the powerful body of a demon, the heavenly river found it more and more difficult to carry on like this. Spirit King, how do you want to die? The heavenly river stared at the Spirit King with his dark green eyes. His hoarse voice was like the murmur of a demon, enough to make people's hearts tremble. In order to forge this supreme law, the heavenly river had spent 2 epochs in the outer world before finally succeeding. The natural disaster this time was even more terrifying. From extremely far away, it was possible to see a dark, deathly world devouring an entire region of stars. The center was constantly collapsing. The Spirit King did not feel any joy or sorrow when he saw his prey struggle to break free. Roar! This was a power that even the Spirit King trembled in fear. Even though the Spirit King did not take the heavenly river seriously, the ultimate fantasy was a power of a higher level than his laws of the sacred spirit. He would be corroded if he came into contact with it. The Spirit King did not even have any intentions of asking him to surrender this time. He directly wanted his life. After the ultimate fantasy collapsed, the power suddenly erupted and began to corrode the surroundings. The heavenly river's body also turned into a domain at that moment to contain the power of the ultimate fantasy. He became more and more panicked. He could not help but roar and roar out. The Spirit King did not choose to take on the power head-on. Instead, he stepped into a spatial black hole. Since natural disasters were not enough, he would try something else. The Spirit King knew he would win from the very beginning. The Spirit King's expression changed as he watched the world gradually being corroded by the power of the ultimate fantasy. He frowned. Instead, he chose to turn around and run in the opposite direction. The Spirit King was like a bystander as he watched the heavenly river struggle to avoid the spatial collapse. As he dodged, he watched the heavenly river struggle in ridicule. However, he did not want to. No one else would want to. At this moment, his form changed again. After successfully transforming, a lot of information immediately appeared in his head, including the omniscience and omnipotence that the Spirit King was so proud of. Heavenly River followed closely behind. As he passed through the black whirlpool, the surroundings shook violently. The black hole was immediately torn apart. This was because he discovered that it was impossible for him to catch up to the Spirit King. Not only was the Spirit King not surprised as he watched Heavenly River avoid the natural disasters in outer space like him, but he even began to laugh happily. This was because he suddenly knew how to use the power. It was basically an invincible cheat that could turn fantasies into reality. As a matter of fact, becoming a creation god was not the end of the Spirit King's goal. As the spinning black hole expanded, the space in front of it was ripped apart. A storm of starlight suddenly surged out like raindrops. The bubbles behind Heavenly River all shattered the moment the battle began. The ultimate fantasy gradually collapsed, and only the tip of the purple horn remained. The power of the ultimate fantasy engulfed the entire world. In an environment like that, danger would arrive in an instant. Even if one's thoughts could keep up, one might not be able to react in time. This was the Spirit King's confidence. Apart from the Spirit King and Heavenly River, no one in outer space knew about the history of this battle. You'll know once you try. At that moment, Heavenly River charged forward. He changed countless times to fend off all of this, but it was all futile. This was because the Spirit King had already calculated his next step and set up a trap beforehand. His body also moved at that moment. He moved according to the prediction in his head, avoiding the invasion of the black specks of light. One Piece, Wang Lufei. At that moment, he understood why his body had changed. At the same time, he felt extremely fortunate that the god artifact had retained his consciousness, preventing him from sinking into the illusion. He suddenly stopped when he realized that if this continued, even his demonic body would be slowly corroded by the natural disasters. The only thing that made him think about something right now was the ultimate fantasy on Heavenly River. Chapter 809. Mu Yi was very excited to see that the illusion worked. At this moment, he once again looked at the broken horn of the illusion. Although the illusion law of nature had been broken, its foundation was still there. It wouldn't take too long to reforge it, and there was no need to collect resources for several eras like Tianhe. At this moment, Mu Yi knew that he had found a treasure. He immediately walked to the deep pit and reached for the horn of the illusion. The moment he touched the horn, the world shook violently and began to collapse inward. A large number of fantasy breed creatures were crushed by this power, turning into the purest illusion force that surged toward the horn. At this moment, apart from the area where Mu Yi was, the rest of the world collapsed. As the starry sky appeared, the domain returned to nothingness, and Mu Yi was completely freed. At this moment, the horn also slowly fused into his body, and Tianhe's voice appeared in his mind again. If possible, help me take revenge. The potential of the illusion is far greater than you can imagine. Perhaps it has no limits. Hearing this, Mu Yi subconsciously nodded. This was because the Holy Spirit King was one of their targets. Since the Holy Spirit King could overthrow the devil race, he believed that under the leadership of that dog of a government official, they could also overthrow the Holy Spirit race. At this moment, the power of the illusion connected with the artifact. Lu Wu immediately sensed everything and looked at Mu Yi. Immediately, he discovered that several forces were approaching Mu Yi. Mu Yi obviously also noticed this because 3 spatial black holes appeared in front of him, and then 3 figures with silver crescent moons on their foreheads walked out. The Holy Spirit race. Mu Yi immediately recognized them. "Give us the illusion, and you can leave," the burly man in the lead said coldly. In fact, when this world began to collapse inward, they had already sensed it because observing this world was a mission given to them by their king. At this moment, they rushed over, but they didn't expect that the illusion had already been taken away, so they naturally wanted to hand it over. Seeing this, Mu Yi smiled. Now that the barrier between him and the artifact had disappeared, how could he be afraid of death? He immediately wanted to contact that dog of a government official to take him away, but at this moment, Lu Wu's voice sounded in his mind. "Mu Yi, I'm taking back your soul now. We can't take the illusion law of nature with us." "Why?" Mu Yi immediately recognized the voice of the damned official and asked anxiously. "I think the Spirit King has already noticed this place when this world collapsed, so it's extremely disadvantageous for us to take away the law of illusion that hasn't completely fused with you. It might lead to the Spirit King finding us. So we're just going to let them take the law of fantasy away?" Mu Yi asked. "Of course not. I'll take away your soul first and leave your body behind. I'll think of a way to help you reforge a new body. We'll play a big game later." "All right, I'll listen to you," Mu Yi immediately replied. At this moment, the divine artifact was activated and Mu Ye's soul was summoned. At the same time, a live stream appeared on the forums, and a notification rang in the minds of all the players. Game notification: come to the forum and get ready to do something big. After Lu Wu's announcement was made, the players entered the live streaming channel one after another. They all wanted to know what the stupid official was talking about. At the same time, a new game announcement appeared. Game notification: insert coins to play the game. 1 million soul coins per session. As soon as the game announcement appeared, Lu Wu simulated Mu Ye's body in the artifact dimension and put his consciousness into the body. The simulated body in the artifact dimension was connected to the soulless body of Mu Yi in the outside world. At this moment, the game notification and Lu Wu's voice rang in Mu Ye's mind. Game notification: you've received 10 game coins. Please start the game. Mu Yi, since you already know how to use the law of illusion, why don't you demonstrate it to everyone? We'll split the soul coins evenly. Hearing this, Mu Yi suddenly understood what the damned official was trying to do. He was excited. Since we can't get it, we might as well use up all the power of illusion. Wait, why is the damned official splitting the soul coins evenly? Mu Yi suddenly asked in surprise. Technical fees? What do you know? Hurry up and do it. Everyone, come and take a look, the damned official is bullying. Before Mu Yi could finish his sentence, he saw the scene in front of him jump and appear in front of the three holy spirits with confused expressions. At this time, his consciousness had been projected by Lu Wu into the soulless body that had fused with the horn of illusion. Seeing that Mu Yi didn't reply, the three holy spirits were obviously impatient. Their figures flickered and approached Mu Yi, ready to attack. Right at that moment, Mu Ye's body suddenly warped, and he transformed from Luffy into another form. He was wearing a black tight-fitting combat suit with a red laminated armor. His long hair draped over his shoulders, and he carried a flame fan with a magatama painted on it. At the moment the transformation was completed, various ways to use the power automatically appeared in Mu Ye's mind. The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan rotated at this moment, and as the two forces approached, a cold smile appeared on Mu Ye's face. Susanoo. The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan suddenly sped up. Chakra formed by the power of illusion gushed out from his body and covered his whole body. Suddenly, Mu Ye's body turned into the shape of a small mountain. With a wave of his hand, he pulled out the two swords from the armor on his back and fiercely slashed at the three approaching figures. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Makino was sent flying, while Susanoo was shattered by the force of the blow. While flying backward, Mu Ye's pupils turned again. Amaterasu! As far as his eyes could see, black flames were burning, and soon, they climbed onto the bodies of the three holy spirits who were approaching again. But to Mu Ye's disappointment, the power of Amaterasu still couldn't shake the three holy spirits. They didn't even try to dodge, and directly appeared next to him. Tsukuyomi! Mu Yi roared again. An illusory realm suddenly appeared, and the three holy spirits were pulled into it. However, this illusory realm didn't even last for a moment before it shattered with a bang. Although they didn't have the Holy Spirit King's Holy Spirit Law, they still had part of the power of the law, so the illusion had no effect on them at all. Even in the state of pseudo-omniscience, they could see through the essence of the illusion. The Tsukuyomi world was over before it could fully exert its power. Seeing this scene, Mu Yi felt extremely helpless. This was really King strong. As expected, the power of a small world was unable to shake the experts of the outer realm. Mu Yi knew that he had to change his form. Otherwise, he would only die if he fought in his Uchiha Madara form. Moreover, he had to use up the illusion source force anyway, so he just had to create more. With this thought in mind, a figure appeared in Mu Ye's mind, and his body began to distort again. When the illusion ended, his hair was completely bald. His facial expression changed to that of a common face without any investment, and a white cloak fluttered in the wind. Break! At this moment, a black hole appeared beside Mu Yi, and a strong pulling force attacked him. Mu Yi cocked his head to the side expressionlessly, then raised his right arm and threw a punch. Boom! The black hole instantly shattered into nothingness, and the violent wind from the punch continued to blow forward, smashing one of the holy spirits into pieces on the spot. Because the illusion completely replaced the mind of the person being transformed, Mu Ye's heart was as calm as Saitama's. He wasn't even surprised by the power of the punch, and his face was still expressionless. The remaining two members of the Holy Spirit clan were stunned when they saw this. I'm bald, but it seems I've also become stronger. Mu Yi clenched his fists and muttered woodenly, rubbing his bald head. Under the horrified gazes of the two remaining holy spirits, Mu Yi looked at them once more and swung his fist again. Normal punch. A terrifying power burst forth from Saitama's fist and swept forward. In the face of this power, the two holy spirits discovered that they couldn't use any spells. They were completely locked in place by this power. At the critical moment of life and death, a figure suddenly descended behind them and disappeared on the spot with the two figures. The Holy Spirit King's figure appeared, and at the same time, countless black holes appeared behind him. His emotionless gaze landed on Mu Yi, and as he activated analysis, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. Saitama, Peak of Void, Character Details, a virtual character created by the law of fantasy. Abilities: unknown character characteristics, emotional confinement. The powerful power in his body has confined his emotions, so he can't cause any major disturbances. At this point, the players in the livestream room realized what kind of ability Mu Yi had obtained. All the players were dumbfounded from the beginning until now. Uchiha Madara, Saitama. Aren't these characters supposed to appear in anime and manga in the human world? Fantasy equals imagination? Equals free creation of characters and abilities? The live stream room exploded when they understood what the damned officials meant by throwing in coins to try out the game. What the F***ck? Fantasy means you can create characters at will? This is so F***king exciting. Give me a shot. I want to play as a Super Saiyan. I want to play as Frieza. That's more exciting. I'm throwing in coins. Hurry up and let me play. One-way pass. I'm coming. What the F***ck? Dozens of people are throwing in coins? I spent 1 million and I'm in the 56th place. Are you all dogs? Victorious Fighting Buddha, I'm coming. Journey to the West, Holy Spirit King, let's go. Great God Pengu, I'm coming. It's all up to you to destroy the Holy Spirit King. Do you think I, Thanos, have no dignity? I'm going to snap my fingers. Who here agrees? Who's against it? Yes, I just want to get beaten up. What's the matter? What's the matter? Is there a problem? Melancholy smoking. JPG. Game notification. You have been muted for 100 minutes. If you break the rules again, you will face the risk of being banned or deleted. Please watch your words and actions. Mu Ye's 2 transformations allowed the players to understand how to use the ultimate fantasy law. Their emotions were getting more and more excited. 1 million soul coins for such a fun game was definitely not a loss. The players began to throw in coins in the livestream room. At the same time, they scolded the players who threw in coins first, calling them dogs who only knew how to compete in hand speed. Looking at the players who were scolding each other as dogs in the bullet screen, Go-Go was caught in the crossfire. He immediately turned on his scolding mode in the livestream room. He had mastered the ability to write 10,000 words in a minute. Although it was not as powerful as Crayon Shinchan's, it was worth it. Looking at the bullet screen in the livestream room, Lu Wu could not help but laugh. Although there were many powerful races in the extraterrestrial world, the players who had lived a peaceful life were not lacking in imagination. After all, in the extraterrestrial battlefield, most of the races believed that the improvement of their own strength was more important than spiritual enjoyment. Therefore, strength and imagination were not related at all. Lu Wu was also looking forward to the upcoming show. Chapter 810. Extraterrestrial Starry Sky, Firmament Starry Sky Godly State, Void State, Ancient God, Emperor State, Void State, Destruction State, Transcendent State. The Holy Spirit King was filled with doubts as he stared at the expressionless Saitama. He knew that the rule of fantasy was extremely powerful. It ranked near the top of the 10 supreme laws, and it was one of the powers that he greatly desired. However, what puzzled him was that the person in front of him had clearly just obtained the rule of fantasy. How did he already have the ability to create a peak void state virtual form? What puzzled him even more was that he could not read any information about this person apart from this virtual person. It was as if the Holy Spirit law's omniscience and omnipotence did not affect him at all. At that moment, Saitama attacked again. He clenched his right fist and punched forward, aiming for the Holy Spirit King. Serious punch! Following Saitama's shout, the punch was like a meteor that suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the starry sky, hurtling forward at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this, the Holy Spirit King raised his hand and punched forward as well. Boom! The point where the two powers met twisted and turned into a domain of nothingness. The shockwave from the punch pushed both of them back a distance. Continuous serious punch. Mu Yi attacked again without hesitation. As the fist marks streaked across the sky, the Holy Spirit King did not choose to face them head-on. He suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind Mu Yi. The Holy Spirit King's holy spiritual energy surged out of his body and bound Mu Yi. As the Holy Spirit King pressed his hand forward, a black hole slowly formed and sucked Mu Yi in, pulling his body. The power within the black hole was extremely terrifying. Although Mu Yi's Saitama's body was extremely tough, it still began to distort under the power. Even though he was at the peak of void state, it was clearly not enough against the Holy Spirit King. Under the pulling force, Mu Yi's body was forced back to its original fantasy breed form. Just as his consciousness was about to fade, Lu Wu made a decisive move and had the first player who had placed a coin take his place. After the player's consciousness was projected into the body, he immediately began to imagine the character in his mind. As a new power erupted in his mind, his body began to change. At this moment, Mu Yiyuan's body had transformed into an anime character that the players in the stream channel were extremely familiar with. The orange-red martial arts suit of the Turtle School had the word Turtle engraved on the heart of the clothes, and an even bigger turtle character was also engraved on the back. He wore a blue wristband on his hand, and his unique black hairstyle was truly unconventional. This form was Kakarot from Dragon Ball, who was also Goku, which many players were familiar with. As the power of the black hole attacked again, Kakarot's hair suddenly turned golden. The power in his body was boiling. In this state, the player was able to withstand the black hole's attack with his physical body alone. A sliver of surprise appeared in the Spirit King's eyes when he saw this. He immediately used his analysis ability. Kakarot, early stage of destruction, character details, a descendant of the fighting race Scion in the Unreal World universe. He has a powerful fighting talent and potential, and can continuously break through his limits in battle. This was the first stage of Super Scion. Other abilities are unknown. In the Super 1 state, Kakarot's hair flickered with golden light, and his whole body ignited with a golden aura. Power flourished in his body, and his muscles bulged. Ah! The powerful force caused the player to cry out, and the violent aura immediately shattered the black hole vortex. Interesting! Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on the Spirit King's face. At this time, Kakarot looked at the Spirit King, and his hands formed a calyx shape. He placed the calyx hand on his waist, and a blue light suddenly appeared in his hand. The power of illusion continuously gathered and turned into a source of power. Turtle! Attack! Chi! Attack! As he raised his hand, a dazzling blue light covered the sky, and a blue beam of light suddenly swept towards the Spirit King. Boom! Even though the Spirit King was prepared, he was still sent flying by this beam of light. His figure was constantly retreating along with the advancing blue beam of light. However, after retreating for some distance, the Spirit King dispersed this power with one hand. His figure flickered and once again appeared in front of Kakarot. His face was almost touching, and he stared at him with a smile. Can you be even stronger? I'm looking forward to your performance. Your use of the law of illusion is much stronger than that trash Tianhe. Kyoken, 100-fold. Without any hesitation, the player decisively chose to use the Kyoken that squeezed out his body's potential. At this moment, Kakarot's strength and speed were greatly increased. Relying on teleportation, Kakarot instantly appeared behind the Spirit King, and the shadows of his fists fell like raindrops. At this moment, the Spirit King's figure was like duckweed in the sea, and he was shaken by wave after wave of violent attacks. However, both the players in the live streaming room and Lu Wu knew that the Spirit King's ability was not limited to this. Back then, he was able to fight against Tianhe when he only mastered the law of the Spirit King, let alone now that he had mastered many laws. The Spirit King seemed to only be exploring the limits of the law of illusion, and he did not use his full strength at all. Even under such violent attacks, he was still at ease. After withstanding millions of punches, the Spirit King suddenly turned around and grabbed Kakarot's hands. Still not enough. Let me see a stronger one. Roar. Without any hesitation, the player activated the Super 2 form. The power of illusion burned again, and a more powerful force surged into the player's body. His golden hair spread backward and elongated. At this moment, his strength had been greatly increased. In the second stage of Super Saiyan, both his strength and speed had been greatly improved. The Spirit King, who was analyzing and observing Kakarot, also noticed this, and an excited smile appeared on his face. Okay, don't let me down. At this moment, the Spirit King's skin turned silvery white, and he slapped Kakarot away. His figure flickered, and the power of the law of ultimate invincible surged out of his body. He punched the surface of Kakarot's body, and it immediately penetrated his chest, leaving a bloody hole. In the face of such a powerful Spirit King, the player could only endure the pain and activate the Super 3 form. His combat power soared again, and he overdrafted his body's potential, once again activating the 100x Kaioken. At this moment, his combat power soared to the later stage of the Annihilation Realm. Without any hesitation, he chose to fight the Spirit King head-on. The silver and gold figures launched the purest close combat. If Lu Wu had not reached a very high level of control over the artifact, he would not have been able to transmit the scene clearly. The surrounding stars also exploded as they fought and moved, and everything returned to nothingness. In less than half an hour, the surrounding space gradually collapsed, forming a horrifying scene of the preliminary stage of an extraterritorial catastrophe. Such a battle seemed to arouse the Spirit King's desire to fight. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. His silvery white body blossomed with a bright light, and it distorted into a silver ball, which fiercely hit Kakarot's chest. Boom! With a loud noise, Kakarot's body instantly exploded, turning into scattered fantasy liquid that slowly reassembled. Once again being beaten back to the fantasy breed state, Lu Wu decisively activated a new round of connection and projected a player in the queue behind him. At this moment, it was a good opportunity to take advantage of the victory, but the Spirit King did not do so. Instead, he waited on the side with an expectant look, as if waiting for a surprise to appear. As the player with the fastest hand speed in the forum, although he did not snatch the first place this time, Mo Xiaoxin still appeared. After his consciousness was projected by the artifact onto the fantasy body, he did not hesitate and decisively began to imagine the virtual character that had already been prepared in his mind. With the surge of the fantasy source power, the fantasy body began to evolve again. A vast and exceptionally domineering aura uncontrollably spread out from this new body. The new figure appeared. He was just standing there, but it was as if he was one with the outer starry sky. Even without fighting, the Spirit King could feel the pressure from the bottom of his heart. He immediately opened the analysis. Sure Hao, Huang's Heavenly Emperor. Character Introduction. His talent is unparalleled throughout the ages. He was born for cultivation and also to face the calamity. His life was extremely glorious, creating endless legends. At his peak, he ruled over the ages and stepped above heaven. Is this above heaven? Mo Xiaoxin, who had completely replaced the virtual character, spoke with the tone of the Huang's Heavenly Emperor. At the same time, he looked straight at the Spirit King. I don't understand what you are talking about. I can feel that you have become very powerful now. Let's continue the battle. Sure Hao frowned when he sensed the spiritual king's battle intent. Seeing that Sure Hao did not respond, the Spirit King did not waste any more words and attacked first. Facing the Spirit King's attack, Sure Hao struck with the World Annihilation Fist and the Reincarnation Fist with both hands at the same time. Under the Spirit King's disbelieving gaze, his body was instantly shattered. The terrifying power spread forward, shattering layers of space, and it took a long time for it to recover. Seeing this scene, the players in the live broadcast room cheered, and the screen was filled with 666 comments. Chapter 8:11. According to Lu Wu's assessment, Huang's Celestial Emperor's power had reached the advanced stage of the Shattering Realm. He killed the defenseless Holy Spirit King with one strike. However, just as the players in the live streaming room were cheering, a black hole suddenly appeared in front of Huang's Celestial Emperor, and the Holy Spirit King walked out of it unscathed. Looking at Huang's Celestial Emperor, the Holy Spirit King's eyes were filled with excitement. Good. You're much stronger than that useless Tianhe, to be able to fabricate such a powerful life form. Don't disappoint me. You're no match for me, Sure Hao said to the Holy Spirit King coldly. The Holy Spirit King didn't reply. A silver mark appeared on the surface of his body, and his muscles suddenly expanded. His body suddenly grew to more than 3 meters tall. Extreme Path, O Dark Body, Third Stage. Facing Huang's Celestial Emperor, the Holy Spirit King finally chose to use the power of the Extreme Path Law. His combat power also skyrocketed. The same Extreme Path Law in the hands of others might not even be able to unleash 1/10 of its power. However, for the Holy Spirit King, he was confident that he could unleash more than half of its power, or even close to 100%. At this moment, Huang's Celestial Emperor's expression also changed. As the Holy Spirit King approached, he raised his hand to meet him. The two figures engaged in an intense battle. Both of them represented the pinnacle of power in their respective world. Every time they moved, they would shatter a piece of space. This was a battle between the combat power at the top of the food chain. Wherever the terrifying power passed, it formed a natural disaster domain. As their combat power skyrocketed, Lu Wu and the players in the live streaming room were dumbfounded. It was not until this moment that they realized how terrifying the potential of the fantasy law was. Just as Tianhe said, anything that could be imagined could be turned into power. This kind of power could make an ordinary creature instantly rise to the top of the food chain. Lu Wu suspected that if Tianhe could have imagined a god of creation, he might have been able to kill the Holy Spirit King. However, Lu Wu was just thinking about it. After all, no one in the firmament world could understand the god of creation. Even with the fantasy law, he couldn't create a real god of creation. For all the creatures in the firmament world, they did not even know what the god of creation looked like, not to mention what the specific abilities of the god of creation were. The old man on the extreme mountain was just a consciousness of the god of creation, so they knew too little about the god of creation. One of the flaws of the fantasy law was that without a detailed fantasy template as a foundation, it was impossible to perfectly simulate the combat power of fantasy creatures. Fortunately, the virtual characters in the 3 realms back then had a nearly perfect cultivation system and character design, so it was effortless for the players to imagine them. After all, there were so many cartoonists, writers, and other occupations that created a complete storyline for these virtual characters and the details of their abilities. Now that it was used in conjunction with the fantasy law, it was perfect. The battle continued. In this battle at the peak, even the Holy Spirit King with the 3rd level of the underworld body was not Sure Hao's opponent. He was almost completely suppressed, and his body was blasted apart more than 30 times. The domineering heavenly emperor Huang displayed his invincibility in this world. Even so, the Holy Spirit King did not feel the slightest fear. Instead, he became more and more excited. The last battle like this was several eras ago, when his opponent was the great demon king of the demon clan, Destruction. That battle made him feel even more nervous and excited than this one. Although he was not Destruction's match, he still won. Now, his strength was different from before. He was stronger and more invincible. Therefore, the Holy Spirit King was still full of confidence in this battle. He had too many trump cards to use, and the underworld body Extreme Law was just one of them. He looked forward to the guy in front of him bringing him more surprises. After his body was blasted apart for the 235th time, the Holy Spirit King's eyes suddenly turned golden. Endless holy spiritual power emerged from his body and began to construct a golden world. The Extreme Law, Divine Right, was activated. This was one of the many extreme powers that the Holy Spirit King had mastered. The Kingdom of Heaven domain quickly formed and enveloped Shurhao, as well as the surrounding outer space. Within this domain, Shurhao immediately sensed that his own power was currently being continuously suppressed and weakened. This was because the Extreme Law Divine Right's ability was to create a new world completely under the Holy Spirit King's control. The Holy Spirit King could set down all the laws inside. Apart from the holy spiritual force that the Holy Spirit King had set up, all other powers would be suppressed by the laws of this world. 10,000 times the gravity. At this moment, the Holy Spirit King pointed at Shurhao and said with a smile, "Boom." The gravity of this world suddenly exploded, pressing down on Shurhao's body. It was as if he was carrying a mountain on his back, making his muscles tense up. Shurhao tried to struggle, but he discovered that the gravity was rapidly increasing. What was even more terrifying was that he could not use all of his power in this Kingdom of Heaven domain. 100,000 times. With the Holy Spirit King's words, the laws of this world automatically adjusted. The gravity increased again, reaching 100,000 times the gravity of an ordinary great world. Under the restraint of the holy spiritual force and the increasing gravity, veins gradually appeared on Shurhao's body. However, the Holy Spirit King no longer increased the pressure. His body grew to 5 meters tall again, and a white halo appeared above his head. He immediately closed in on Shurhao and smashed him into the ground with a punch. "Can you still fight? I don't want it to end like this." Shurhao did not say anything. He raised his head against the pressure and suddenly took action. A new round of close combat erupted. With the support of the Kingdom of Heaven domain, the Holy Spirit King's battle prowess was constantly increasing. He was evenly matched at the start, but he gradually gained the advantage. However, what surprised the Holy Spirit King was that Shurhao's body seemed to be adapting to the Kingdom of Heaven domain as well. It was also growing stronger. It was just a virtual character, but the battle talent it displayed shocked the Holy Spirit King. At this moment, the Holy Spirit King's heart was filled with sorrow and regret. If he really existed, how great would that be? Then his path towards invincibility would not be so lonely. He had not had an opponent for a long time, but this virtual character made his blood boil. "I'll give you a chance. Let me see what level you can reach." He knew that the virtual creature in front of him had always been using up the fantasy origin power of the Supreme Fantasy Law. For someone like him who wanted to obtain the Fantasy Law, it was a huge loss. However, for the Holy Spirit King, an opponent that he could fight was what he wanted more. One of his pursuits was to challenge the limits. However, after subverting the evil demon clan, he had long set his sights beyond the firmament world. Because he was omniscient and omnipotent, he knew that no one in this world was his opponent. There were no limits to speak of. Whether it was the Void Insect Clan or the Death God's smiling face and other creatures with peak battle prowess, they all piqued his interest. However, in the end, he felt regretful. Until now, he was the only transcendent realm expert in this starry sky. He believed that he would definitely transcend in the future, break through the shackles of the firmament world, and descend into the larger world outside. This was the reason why he was constantly becoming stronger and forging the supreme law at the same time. Everything was for the sake of transcending. He wanted to head to the outside world and challenge the new limit. Ha ha ha, continue, continue. In the battle, the Holy Spirit King shouted excitedly. He even took the initiative to receive Sure Hao's heavy punches. At this moment, he felt extremely satisfied. He even chose to give himself the gravity shackles to reduce his battle prowess. This world constructed by the Holy Spirit force was extremely sturdy. However, under such violent collisions, cracks gradually appeared. However, the Holy Spirit King didn't care about this at all. He devoted himself to the battle. His blood was boiling. This was the opponent he had been waiting for. Boom! Following a shocking explosion, the Divine Nation domain collapsed. The two of them were knocked back by the shockwaves. At this moment, Sure Hao's body was covered in wounds. Even though Heavenly Emperor Huang was invincible in the world he came from, there were still too many uncertainties here. The structure and laws of the world were different, and there was a different battle prowess system. There was also a controller who couldn't completely grasp his abilities. What a pity! What a pity! I regret not having an opponent like you on my path of growth. The Holy Spirit King looked at Sure Hao with regret. At this moment, Sure Hao had also reached a critical point. However, he didn't choose to retreat. He continued to stare at the Holy Spirit King. I can still fight. You've already reached your limit. There's no need. If I didn't lose the Tao unification law, I really want to create a true body for you so that you can truly exist in this world. No matter if you're a friend or a foe, I believe my life will be much more interesting. The Holy Spirit King shook his head regretfully. As the Holy Spirit King's voice faded, Sure Hao's body suddenly shattered. He once again turned into an illusion seed and slowly reformed. At this moment, the Holy Spirit King still didn't attack. Instead, he waited expectantly. He wanted to know if this guy who had obtained the illusion law could still create miracles. At this moment, the consciousness of the player behind Mo Xiaoxin entered the illusion seed's body. Then, he decisively began to imagine the virtual character he had prepared. His body began to rapidly consume the power of the illusion seed. He had purple skin, a chin with a giant vertical stripe, and a muscular body. He wore a blue and gold shirt with golden shoulder armor and a pair of golden boots. At the same time, he wore a blue and gold helmet with a gemstone on his forehead. Under the Holy Spirit King's curious gaze, the Eternal Clan member born on Titan's star, who was also the Marvel World supervillain boss, appeared in Heaven's Vault world. The players in the live broadcast room were all very familiar with this figure. He also had a name that the players were all familiar with, Purple Potato Spirit. At this moment, the Infinity Gloves also appeared on Thanos' right hand. Strength, time, space, soul, reality, and spirit were all embedded into the Infinity Gloves in order. At this moment, the Holy Spirit King's heart throbbed. This was because he sensed a strange power that he had never seen before surging within the purple-skinned creature's body. It's my turn. Thanos looked at the Holy Spirit King and grinned. Then, he clenched his fist. Suddenly, a dense purple airflow swept out with him as the center. The purple gemstone of power suddenly shone, and then he suddenly punched at the Holy Spirit King. Under the extreme power, the void was obliterated, and the Holy Spirit King was once again reduced to nothingness. However, the moment the incarnation was obliterated, the Holy Spirit King laughed wildly in his heart. Another surprise had arrived. Chapter 8:12. Once again, the Holy Spirit King was killed by Thanos's power gem. But this was not a real death. Among the many extreme laws that the Holy Spirit King had mastered, there was rebirth, which was why he was almost immortal. As long as his will was not obliterated, he could be reborn in the resurrection space. When his body was reforged in nothingness, he walked out of the resurrection space and reappeared in front of the players in the live broadcast room through the black hole space. Looking at Thanos, the Holy Spirit King felt his blood boil again. Another surprise came. First, it was Huang Heaven Emperor, and now it was this purple-skinned creature. The Holy Spirit King could smell his own kind from them. A lonely expert. Again. This time, the Holy Spirit King took the initiative. His right arm suddenly glowed purple, and he punched at Thanos. The extreme law surged, and the purple light collided with the purple mist on Thanos's body. The two forces began to press against each other. The ultimate power of the Marvel world began to wrestle with the ultimate power of the law of the firmament world. As the two forces continued to rise, the Holy Spirit King's smile became more and more fanatical. In the battle, his understanding of the extreme law continued to rise, and so did his power. Accompanied by his shout, he pushed away the purple mist and sent Thanos flying with a punch. At this moment, Thanos's body began to shatter inch by inch, collapsing as he retreated. In the face of this situation, Thanos decisively opened the time gem, and his body quickly recovered to its original state. Then, he retreated while being repeatedly destroyed and repaired. Seeing this power, the Holy Spirit King's expression became very interesting. The power of time and space. If he did not know that the creature in front of him used the power of the ultimate law of fantasy, he would have thought that the purple-skinned creature had stolen his integration law. Because one of the characteristics of the integration law was time and space. Therefore, the Holy Spirit King was sincerely convinced by the creature that could imagine this power. He felt that even the omnipotent Holy Spirit King would not be able to use the power of the integration law better than the guy in front of him. Although it was not the integration law, the glove had gathered the power of many extreme laws, which really shocked him. At this moment, the Holy Spirit King could not help but think of Tianhe, who had spent a lot of effort to forge the integration law. Compared to the fellow in front of him, he was simply an eyesore, a complete piece of trash. Just as he had said before, the fantasy law was a complete waste in Tianhe's hands, even if he had spent a few epochs to gather a large amount of fantasy origin energy to forge it. The Spirit King felt like the person before him was just too compatible with the laws of fantasy. He was basically born for this power. Ever since Sure How appeared, he had developed an interest in the fella in front of him. When Thanos appeared, he was thoroughly excited. He didn't care about the fantasy, he just wanted to have a hearty battle. With the complete eruption of full power, the Lord Destroyer was shattered 8,000 times, but he still used the temporal gem to repair himself one last time. He stood before the Spirit King in perfect condition. "What other tricks do you have?" The Spirit King withdrew the violet mist and the laws of might into his body. He then smiled at the Tyrant Destroyer. Slayer Lord's face turned gloomy when he saw that the power gem had no effect. He had already realized that he was not the Spirit King's opponent from the first clash, but he still had a trump card in hand. He did not believe that the Spirit King could withstand this attack. With the Infinity Gauntlet and the power of 6 Infinity Gems, he believed that no one could withstand this attack. "Spirit King, if you can withstand this attack, I admit defeat." The Tyrant Destroyer looked at the Spirit King and said with a deep voice, "I'll wait and see." The Spirit King's expression also became stern when he heard that. He could sense 6 strands of unknown power from the Tyrant Destroyer. Right now, the Tyrant Destroyer had only used one of them. There were still 5 strands that he had not used. As a result, he looked forward to the upcoming attack very seriously. He believed that the power that the Tyrant Destroyer mentioned would definitely be very great, enough to attract his attention. The Tyrant Destroyer did not waste any more words. He raised his right arm, and as the 6 gems shone with light, the muscles on his arm tightened. Veins appeared one after another. What was different from the finger snap from the Marvel world back then was that this power only targeted the Spirit King and not all the creatures in this world. This was because he did not need to achieve the so-called balance of the universe here. The Spirit King gasped as the 6 infinity gems shattered. He could sense a power no weaker than the laws of extreme way rapidly forming, and it was erupting at full strength. Pah! As the tyrant destroyer snapped his fingers, a beam of colorful light suddenly swept towards the Spirit King from his hand. The space that came into contact with the energy was immediately reduced to nothingness. It was not in a state of nothingness that could be repaired. Instead, it completely disappeared, becoming a black domain. There was no light, no sound, nor the concept of space and time. All traces of existence had been erased. The Spirit King was shocked when he saw this. He decisively used his most powerful defensive form, Crocodile. A ring of blue light surged from his body, enveloping the surroundings. Time and space in the region completely froze. The beam of light from the infinite power came into contact with the extreme way's crocodile space and immediately came to a halt. However, it still broke free at a slow speed in the end, slowly advancing towards the Spirit King. The Spirit King's forehead became covered in sweat when he saw this. In his perception, this power could only be described with one word, and that was obliteration. It seemed that as long as this power came into contact with it, all traces of existence would be instantly erased, completely vanishing from this part of the firmament world. As he was shocked, the Spirit King did not dare to hold back anymore. The power of the extreme way's crocodile power was pushed to the extreme to limit the infinite power produced by the tyrant destroyer's snap of fingers. As a milky white halo appeared above the Spirit King's head, the heavenly domain was formed once again. However, even the power of the crocodile and theocracy ultimate laws could not suppress the infinite power. The beam of colorful energy was still slowly approaching him. Most importantly, this energy did not seem to belong to the firmament world. Even the omniscient and omnipotent could not find its weakness. In the face of death, the Spirit King used the new power of the extreme way's law. A dark red light suddenly burst forth from his body, turning into a dark red magic blade. It instantly slashed at the infinite power. The Spirit King had tested the power of this attack several times before. It could cut through all physical and virtual bodies in the firmament world, and even the power of the soul and mind. However, the Spirit King did not expect that the moment this power came into contact with the infinite power, it would be erased bit by bit. Although it did not shake the nomological origin of the extreme way / power in his body, the power released was being nibbled away irreversibly. If he did not withdraw this power into his body, the extreme way / would eventually become an empty shell, and he would have to collect the power inside again. At this moment, the Spirit King was extremely nervous, but also extremely excited. This power was too terrifying. It had completely simulated a power no weaker than the ultimate law, and even more powerful than most of the extreme laws. As far as he knew, there was only one person in the firmament world who could do this, and that was the God of creation. Although the person in front of him had reached this step by relying on the fantasy law, and did not completely create it, it was still enough to earn the Spirit King's respect. You really are suitable for the fantasy law. It will not be buried in your hands. I acknowledge you. The Spirit King sincerely praised the tyrant destroyer, who was panting weakly. At this moment, the Spirit King had unlocked the shackles of his power. The power that belonged to the transcendent realm had finally descended,